Hey, welcome everyone to the Sketch Zone podcast. I'm Carlos Gomez. This is episode 148. 148 episodes of that one podcast that you guys know and love. This week, we're kicking it up a notch.
Yes, we are.
Because we have, I'm excited. I'm excited to talk to Peter. And then Jack and I got to hang out with him a little bit. We'll get to that here in a little bit.
Yeah, just
let me go ahead and introduce you guys to Peter. Of course I drew that. Han.
Peter Han style. You got your own theme song.
Yo, he's cheersing. Wait a minute.
Normally we do claps, but
here's Peter. Cheers.
What are you drinking, Peter?
Nice.
Yeah.
Got
you see what I'm talking about?
I'm gonna Oban at 14 right here.
Very
nice. Carlos, where's your drink?
Right here. I have a glass of 2018 Sonoma tap water on the rocks.
Gotta go with the mason jar. You gotta be southern about it, and you gotta have iced tea in it.
I don't know if you can see this up close, but this has.
There's a skull in it.
That's what a gentleman drinks.
The gentleman, yes, the gentleman, the scholar.
Drink out of a skull.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of gentlemen, Jack Kasperzak is here.
It's no gentleman. I got a massive red Solo cup.
More like a bro, right?
Bro, I'm back.
Charlie gets so used to me kissing his butt in public. He's like, "Oh, here we go. Oh, now I'm a gentleman." I had to pull a rug out from under him. Oh, hey, speaking of which, Charlie B. Williams is here.
Just when I take 2 steps forward, they pull me 5 steps back.
Always blaming on other people.
Well, you know, I was about to say something very nice about Carlos, and then he did that, so we're going to reserve that for another week.
Oh, hey, just like Landon. Hey, Landon. Hey, Amber.
Welcome,
whoever else is in the chat room, go ahead and let us know who you are, where you're from.
Please chat.
And if you have a interesting name, like initials and stuff like that, let us know what you want us to refer you as.
Ooh, spit it out.
I know, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're watching live, go ahead and feel free to jump in on the chat there. Otherwise, you can. That's right. Use the Sketch Zone hotline. That's 408 Sketch 8. That's 408-753-8248. International callers, you know who you are. Use 011-408-753-8248.
What's up, Dave?
Sketch Zone podcast. So now that we got that out of the way,
yeah,
you know what time it is?
What time is it?
Let's go to the canvas here and let's get started.
I believe every day's a good day when you paint. Oh, hey, last week, let me flip over one. Last week we had a Sketch Zone pin. That's right. That's not it either. There we go. A detail-oriented butler in Chuck Jones style.
I think we scared some people away with Chuck Jones.
Little bit, but that's all right because we got some killers like K Castle draws. K Castle draws.
Kind of roadrunnery.
Yeah. The little nice little background there. He's paying attention to the wine. That's, for the record, that's how people in Napa look at wine. A little too closely. Just pop the bottle and get it going. In Sonoma, we don't worry about labels. We worry about drinking wine. So good job, Kai Castle. Any constructive criticism? Anyone?
Ask, how much time are these people given when the prompt is given, and then is it like a 3-day period? Is it a week or?
We announce it every Thursday, so you have till the next Thursday. So some people like Shiloh, we'll see Shiloh. I'm usually kind of early. Jack is early sometimes. But then you have people like Landon that'll he'll submit it at 8:58 on a Thursday night.
So he was given 2 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're given a week to work on this, and obviously the prompt is challenging because Chuck Jones' style is difficult to match up to. That guy was a master.
Yeah.
But like, do people ever post up, I guess, steps or even thumbnails or even like in between stages of things too, and like ask for criticism?
Yeah, sometimes people post GIFs, you know,
Nice.
and post like processes and stuff like that.
But that's a good point.
yeah,
If you
that's a very
post
good
your
point,
works in progresses, we'd be happy to take a look.
Especially if it's a difficult prompt that I've been hearing. It's like, oh, I don't think many people did this one because they were a little bit put off or maybe scared by it. That's where I would have done that. You know, it's like maybe even drawn in some of his styles, some of the characters that Chuck was known for, and then from there, it's like maybe implement it into something that you know. I think that would have been a good way to-
Totally.
That'd be great. Yeah.
It's a nice piece though.
Mm-hmm.
I like the colors.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, the coolest part about it is I like minimalistic style in the background, right? So the whole silhouettes and stuff like that, real simple lines back there, but the detail character in the front, you know, kind of spits to that time period in terms of like animation and stuff. The main character is gonna be the most like detailed, but I've always used to like that about his style. Is like the really
I noticed
artsy backgrounds.
Most of the submissions picked up on the background style, which is really interesting.
And that was something where, well, I'll wait for mine to show up. So let's take a look. Oh, here we are. I actually did this streaming live, and I actually was trying to dissect the approach that I thought was a Chuck Jones way of doing things. What I was explaining was that the characters never really, not never, but very hardly ever had a lot of shading and everything. The detail was left to the strokes. But then there was a lot of details in the backgrounds that didn't really have strokes, but there was a lot more detail associated to the background or saved for the background. So. So anyway, this one's mine. Bottle of wine, obviously, because that's what we do.
Wine country.
All right, let's see who else is here. We got Shiloh. I like this. Shiloh always has wonderful stories on his.
It's cool that it's still obviously his though, but it does also feel clumsy.
Yeah. But it'd be interesting to hear. I don't know if Shiloh's in the chat yet, or if he's still. Sometimes he pops in, but I would be interesting to hear him explain this one, or type it out in the chat, because you know, you can, like Jack said, you can still tell it's his style, but at the same time, like I love to see there's something different from Shiloh this week, where he tried to push himself. You know.
Huh. I definitely respond really good to this one too, mainly because whenever I see these kinds of word prompts, you know, ones that were done back in CTN, the one you guys were doing at the last kind of animation show, people are always kind of really gravitating towards the technique and the look, the visual style of something, and they kind of forget about the other words sometimes. And so, you know, the word of Butler and of course detail-oriented are really important, I guess, visual cues to pull from too. So sometimes those words don't really work in harmony and the image doesn't really back it up. So even though the style or the look of this piece might gravitate towards that, but then the other words kind of fall short. That balance is really tough, I find, in this one. But this one in particular, the one that Shiloh did, I like a lot because it actually hits those really, really well, where it does remind me of Chuck Jones' style, but it also is storytelling-wise, as you guys were saying, words really, really well. So.
And at the same time, each week when Shiloh does do one of these pieces, we always comment on how the extra mile he goes in terms of all the different sub characters he puts in the scene,
right?
The story. So I think, you know, him already building up that type of language in terms of like what he does in his drawings helped him hit that. You know, in this case, it's the sculpture. You know, and how hard it is to make it. You know,
he really does put a lot of thought into the storytelling part of it. He's got technique. If you look through his work, he's got the technique. That's a given. But yeah, I think that's the one thing that I really do look forward to in Shiloh stuff is his storytelling.
Gives me an Elmer Fudd type of hairstyle, everything vibe, something like that.
Yeah,
cool, great job.
Let's see. This is a new one. Saloon Saloon Art. And I believe he's just now getting into art, and he's getting, you know, he's working on all the basic fundamentals. So, you know, so I do like that he's the pose of this character is not, you know, straight on and, you know, super he is kind of stiff because his legs are super straight. So if anything, add some more flexibility to the legs and even some arms. Play with, and this is something that I'm currently doing too, play with really pushing the pose, get more curves in there. When you're drawing, remember there's a lot of C's, backward C's, S's, backward S's. So work on that. But yeah, I think for just now getting into it, I think this is a pretty good start.
I think for someone who's just starting also, if they're beginning just to help, I guess, using their techniques to storytell or visualize, really tough. And even the things you're talking about, as important as they are, I think for someone who's just coming in, those words or even terminologies can kind of go over their heads sometimes too. That's apply it. Like, where does it go? Okay. I think in that sense, because of the fact that we're using a style, that's what I'm at first. Like, imitation actually is a really important thing. At young ages, when you're a kid, or even when I was a teen in high school, I would imitate and copy comic artists all the time, down to the But the thing is, because we see those people, we want to be just like them. But eventually, what happens is that you have to be able to adapt and also mature past that from imitation. Copy,
for sure. Yeah.
So, in this someone who's just starting off, I don't care how old you are. You could be starting when you're a kid or someone older. Imitation is really important because you could have pulled from posing, from the camera, from the shapes, from the style. And then, even though it may look like something Chuck Jones may already have done, because you're starting out, I mean, that's the way you want to kind of pick up things as you go. That's what I would recommend.
I think that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And learning from, you know, even just by, because I remember being a kid and, you know, everybody used to yell at you, you're tracing or whatever. But, you know, we've talked about this on the show a lot. You know, you learn from the other artists and the difficult things they've already figured out. You can learn from their habits and their style. You know, you have trouble drawing a hand or a nose or whatever, but if you see how somebody else has done it, it kind of, they've already done the work of translating a physical object into a drawing.
For sure. Yeah, I remember very vividly trying to copy different things, different comic books and stuff like that, growing up and stuff like that, and getting angry, getting in trouble for getting overly frustrated, and parents yelling at me to calm down and try it again, or taking other stuff, take it away, take the sketchbook away, down, you know, and then and say,
Charlie's that one kid that wanted to draw, and his parents are like, "Go play video games." You don't know how to act.
She was sitting me outside and do something else. You could try again later. We don't get so frustrated. Paper's all wet. It was a mess. But yeah.
Hey, Animator 2189. If this is your drawing, yeah, we really appreciate this. Yeah, no worries. That's what we're here for. And welcome to the wonderful world of animation and illustration. You're gonna have fun.
The other thing I would quickly just say about that, and it kind of is jumping off of both Peter and Carlos said, and you can return to this style at some point with the kind of hatching, slow, sketchy lines. But if you especially notice in Chuck Jones and a lot of animators is you end up simplifying stuff because you have to draw it thousands of times. And something like this, you also want to think about. You want to think about what the medium and the way you're portraying your line and the style of drawing, what it actually does to the story. And since we're drawing a character that's, you know, arguably pretty stiff and, you know, is well put together and stuff, try doing like a really confident line, like following all the way through and seeing where that leads you. You might be surprised in what it does to the silhouette and what it does to the character of the pose. And, you know, you do something like that and then you can totally return to a different style, but just give that a try and see what that leads to.
But yeah, as far as lines go, and it's important that we, not important that we say it, but this is where my thought process went when you were talking about that. It's okay to get these sketchy lines in there.
Sure.
But what your lines are saying is that you're not real comfortable with your hands yet. So get comfortable drawing, and we'll probably talk about this a lot in the show here in a little bit, but do warm-up circles and do warm-up lines, and if you watch any of Peter's videos, any of them, he talks about, you know, getting in there and practicing short lines and then longer lines and circles and stuff like that. But yeah, we'll move on because we're definitely not trying to pick on you. We're just trying to give you your next
totally
steps. Some of the things that you should keep in mind when you're moving forward. But I think this is a really good start.
Yeah.
I was looking forward to seeing this one.
Yeah, this one here.
This one is the characters are so dead on. It's so Cander's Creations. He said your mocha latte with extra foam, whipping cream, 2 tablespoons of cinnamon, and exactly 78 degrees, Mr. Duck. That's paying attention to detail right there.
Yeah, it's very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good delivery. Good job, Canders. I was looking forward to seeing this one in public. Who's this? Oh, Sketchbook Jack.
Yeah, I went for something different. Not my normal. Not my normal look.
But the light, I like the lighting, coloring, and rendering.
Exactly. One of the things that really stood out to me was whenever Chuck Jones wanted to really emphasize the point of something being creepy, he did nothing to the characters. He did everything to the environment. And this is exactly what you pulled off with this one.
Yeah. Nice. I feel like I've, seen those like heavy shadows in the windows and stuff like that from different cartoons, before.
Yeah, I love those like super distorted, like but simple and retro backgrounds that you used to do. Super fun.
What do you think the approach with Jack when it comes to breaking some of the actual fundamentals of like perspective? Like when you start to get trained in something, it's hard to break away from certain things.
It is. It's really hard.
Like going into like the furniture and the wall and everything like is distorted and abstract to a certain degree. And there's obviously a plane of a perspective to work within. But then obviously that's what he was doing too in his backgrounds.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, obviously he totally understood perspective and he knew how to still convey it and yet break it and distort it. That's a really good point. And I actually didn't really, I mean, I did think about it because obviously a lot of the lines are a little wonky and off.
Yeah.
But yeah, how to still make it convincing and still feel like a perspective drawing.
Right.
That's a good question.
Because to be honest, that's something I actually ran into trouble with. It was a game that I worked on a couple years ago, and the game's visual style had to be drawn in a kid's style, like a teenager kid style. Our game was designed to look just like a teenager kid style, drawn in like a lined, kind of book. So I tried working on some of the pieces, and I would try to draw and design some like the vehicles or the weapons, but I couldn't match the look of it because it had to be really, really not necessarily primitive, but to the look of like a kid drawing it, So
right.
Design out some props with my left hand just because I didn't want the control, because I was overly tuned with the way I would draw with my right hand. I wasn't able to match up to a certain look that's supposed to look somewhat inexperienced, I guess, in a way. Where again, even here, like it's not to say there's an experience. There is, again, like you said, a picture plane, perspective, all that stuff, and you're purposely breaking some of those rules within the plane to kind of give a visual look and also make it feel maybe unsettling or for the story. So I find that to be kind of interesting when I talk to people about how you then be aware of certain formulas and education, and knowing how to break some of those things too. That's why I wonder how people in TV do it, because a lot of that stuff is being broken in those areas too. Got to be difficult for me, I would say.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. Yeah, because it's like and then there's like folks like Ralph Steadman and stuff that work with controlled mess, and it's kind of like that's like a whole technique in itself. It looks really chaotic and disastrous, and yet it's like perfectly composed. Yeah.
Really interesting.
But to point out, you know, since we've been since we've been kind of not picking, I was gonna make a joke, but I want to make sure that I do. I was gonna say, since we've been banging on new artists today, don't worry about breaking planes. Don't worry about messing with perspective at all. Learn perspective first, and then when you start getting comfortable, then start breaking planes of perspective. Don't use breaking the rules as an excuse to not be good at the rules.
Yeah, I mean, there's the whole reason that you learn to be a craftsman first. You know, you got to know what the rules are and the structure is in order to then break them appropriately. So
real quick, Josefina, she says the atmosphere really sells it, and that nice straight line for the backside, and distortion versus accuracy for character. Hello, Noel. How's it going? How's Texas? Oh, see, I read Landon. I thought she said I'm in London. I was like, no, that's not what Instagram says.
Stalker.
All right, let's see. Here's another one. We got
classic
sketch art. He's another one that stayed true to the second part of the prompt, which is fine. I mean, that's the exercise.
Totally.
And I think this. Oh no, we got Landon's next. Peter, I always kind of say this. No, I don't. Kind of. I always say this on the show. If you feel like your drawing is getting too repetitious, draw someone else's stuff in their style, just to kind of break your hands free, just to get your hands away from doing the same movements all the time. Does that make sense?
Oh, it does, absolutely. Is that something I do even currently now? I do, in a way.
Yeah.
But slightly more controlled. It's more not like where I'm looking at the individual artist that I appreciate or like and directly trying to, I guess, transfer all the information that he's done over to, he or she has done to my page, but more of taking elements of things that I appreciate or I find strengths in and pulling. So what it is about being very analytical about people's work also, not in a way, but more of like, what do I even like about it? You know, some people could say, I like that work. Well, then why? You know, what is it about those pieces you like? And then can you then be consistent with those pieces also? So the maturity to say, you know, this and that, I feel like this is good. I feel like this is not good. And some people are, especially students, are very hesitant to say because they feel like they don't know, but because they feel like they don't have the experience. But I think instinct can also be a very big part of what plays into what you like and don't like. Build style and taste, essentially.
Yeah. Nice. And then let's see, we got Concane.
Yeah.
Nice traditional piece. Working them markers, kid.
Analog is always nice.
Watercolor brush.
I watched a video where one Peter Hahn was playing with one of these watercolor brushes, and it took everything inside of me, every fiber of my being, to not go on Amazon and buy one of these things.
Nice.
Yeah, good job, Con. And hang on, because I know Landon's is in here somewhere. Here we go.
I go, you got to search for it.
Landon. You want to talk about someone who is just like, screw it, I'm doing my own pose. I don't even care. He's like, here. He's got a
microscope.
He's really getting in there and trimming that carpet.
Trimming that carpet.
He's got the scissors between his legs and he's trimming the carpet.
All right. Okay.
All right. See?
You had it. Wait, hey, you guys took it there.
You had something good.
I'm trying to describe Landon's piece to people who may be watching, who may be listening on iTunes.
Chat's gonna kill you.
There is an object oriented, detail oriented butler sitting on a carpet, trimming the carpet between his legs.
Okay, Carlos.
How would you describe this pose?
That's what he's got.
You got it. I'm just gonna let Chad deal with you. That's all.
Chad is dealing with you.
You know what happened last week.
Let's look at this drawing.
Yes, let's go.
So that's it. Thanks, Landon. Way to sneak it in.
All right, let's get the new prompt and let's move on.
Let's do this.
All right, the new prompt. Here we go. That good internet says.
All right, so wait a minute. What did we do last week? Are we changing up anything?
Let's have Peter.
Yeah, Peter's gonna pick.
We usually do 3. You know, we've done 2. Sometimes we've done 4 or 5, which people tend to hate.
But you do what you want, Peter.
It's
your pick.
So, Peter, go ahead and take a look at the fun prompter.
Okay.
We have adjective, animal, character, action, style, and location. Do any of these pique your interest?
Yeah, the first one definitely is adjective. I think that word or that prompt is extremely always helpful in this exercise. Have some sort of action to go in there. Obviously, the word action could potentially be combined together too, but I'd rather choose one of them and just go for adjective. From adjective, I would say, play with animal. I would do that one. I love drawing animals.
Here we go. Yeah.
We're going to talk about that too, because this dude is sick.
Already, instead of style, I think location would be a good challenge.
Ooh,
nice.
Challenging part of it.
Custom.
All right, here we go. Are we ready? Oh,
boom.
Yes.
A hip fish in a ballroom.
Yo, thank you, Peter Hahn. That's awesome.
That's a good one.
It felt seasoned. It felt custom. There you go, nation. You got something good. A
hip fish in a ballroom.
I like it. That's fun.
That's gonna be good. Yeah. So go ahead and hit us with the theme.
Let's go to the canvas here and let's get started. I believe every day's a good day when you paint.
Hey, do you guys think it's too late for me to get into the animation industry?
It's never too late.
I need to hurry up and get in because did you guys hear?
What happened?
Animation workers are set to receive $170 million payout from wage theft from that wage theft lawsuit. I need to get in now.
That segue. Yes.
Well,
no, I'll watch your language.
Nor am I.
Yeah. For some reason, I thought about you, Jack, when I read this article earlier this week. I was like, just missed the VFXer. Just missed. I didn't see enough companies in there.
No.
So, who wants to elaborate on this story?
We talked about this story like
when it first happened.
Yeah, a year ago, right?
So basically, the long short of it is that some evidence was uncovered that a whole bunch of companies, Pixar, Disney, Lucas, who else was in there? Sony.
Mm-hmm.
Blue Sky.
Yeah,
yep.
There's a good handful of studios. We're all basically in together to fix wages and agree to not to poach each other's artists, all that types of stuff. And class action lawsuit has been going on for what, like a good year and a half?
Good year and a half, almost 2 years, yeah.
So this is almost like a reverse, what you call it? When you're in the animation industry, if you're one of the workers, you belong to this group.
Union? Guild?
Union. This is like a reverse union.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of anti-union, union busting stuff. Yeah. It's like secret.
But wait a minute. Isn't animation workers, they have a union though, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
So
yeah.
Is that who uncovered it, or was it I don't know. I don't remember how it actually got broken.
I don't. It's a good thing. I actually don't know how it was uncovered.
Because I want to somebody. It's pretty good. It's a pretty good investigative reporting or whatever to find out, or unless people are just loosey goosey at all these studios, or some HR person slipped up and said this is a thing. You know.
What I'm looking at right now is there was a link on the article that tells you the list of qualifying job titles. And I'm going through the list right now. It's like there are people
Right.
who aren't even artists. They're like systems engineer for Disney, and there's like story analysts, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
seems like
Everybody, man. And it says you're supposed to get 2 installments. So you're gonna get 2 installments. The first one's it's in July. I think it's the 7th or something like that. Something like that. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on it, but read the article. It'll tell you. And then they'll have another installment. So you get
Okay.
that's what that lump sum is. You know.
So this spawned out of a separate investigation. Actually, there was a U.S. Department of Justice investigation actually that was filed against Google, Apple, Intel, and Adobe for questionable hiring practices. Which then, because of their link to Apple, they also looked into Pixar and Lucas. That's Disney, and they began to uncover this information.
Can you imagine? You're like, wait a minute. There's a link.
Yeah, follow the money. Follow the money.
Follow Apple. Follow the trail. It will lead you to all type of discoveries.
And companies have been doing this for a little while now, because up here in Silicon Valley, I think like Apple, Google, Facebook, all those guys got busted for kind of the same thing, like price fixing, not poaching, developers, because developers are worth a lot of money, and they know it. But then when you're going from spot to spot, and same thing with animators, if you're going from spot to spot, that's your thing. Like you gotta get the money when you can.
Right. And the best part about it, they were saying too, Naruto, that I think it was what's the guy's name? The head of Disney? It was like kind of like one of the main names in this article.
Catmull, or
Catmull was kind of one of the major guys, and he got caught up in a bunch of emails that basically he was the one not helming this, but he was a major player.
Which just makes him look bad.
Well, yeah.
But it seems like nothing really come from that, but you know, or even will it? They've had a rough year, right?
Yeah. A little bit of a rough go.
I don't know.
Hey, Peter, you've worked in the animation industry, haven't you?
In terms of being in a studio, I have not actually. Not in terms of feature or even TV. I did work on something very recently, this year actually, on a feature I can't talk about, unfortunately, still under wraps. I've dealt with many people that wanted to work in the industry. I have a lot of friends who are professionals in the industry as well. Mm-hmm. So I know a lot about what goes on inside those studios. So I hear a lot of stories all the time. We don't delve into too much detail on certain things. But, you know, I hear kind of stories definitely continues to confirm my hesitancy to go back into a studio. You know, whether it's in or even like back in games, potentially even things like in feature. There are definite benefits of working for yourself, for sure. But so stories like these are interesting, how they come back again.
And since being in the age of information,
it
feels like these things everything just bubbles to the top, and you find out about a lot more stuff, which gives you a one-up in terms of information. You know, it's good to know.
Just in case no one has been following, for some strange reason, someone out there hasn't been following Peter Hahn style on Instagram. Name drop a few places that you've worked at.
Oh man. I mean, in terms of studio gigs, I worked for Sony down in San Diego. Last main huge company I was at for interactive and games was a company called Trion in San Diego also. A lot of the studios I was based at was actually down south in the San Diego area. I started working in games here in the LA area first after my school was at Art Center. worked for a company called Technicolor, and we did about a lot of outsourcing for a lot of different games and all that kind of stuff too. But that was about 7 years worth of studio gigs and life in video game interactive design. But after that, then I kind of ventured out into doing a lot of personal projects. But I think one of the more fun projects actually out there in terms of high profile, that really wasn't for a studio, but it was actually the project itself. I always kind of show a lot of my students this particular project, but it was a Super Bowl commercial back in 2011 for Coca-Cola, and that was a amazing project. But it was an animation because everything was CGI animation. Like that kind of dropped on my lap, and things like this definitely happen in your career, where big notable projects like this are definitely kind of a big cherry on the top. Right?
What was your role in that commercial?
Essentially design of creatures and props and armor sets, because the entire commercial was set in this very high fantasy setting. So I had a lot of dragons and monsters, and they had me design that entire half of the side. And then I think there were some other designers that designed like the good guys essentially, and the entire commercial was about their battle and how they came together. It was pretty cool. And then you watch the Super Bowl one year, and all of a sudden your commercial comes up.
Yeah, it's the best feeling. But yeah.
Absolutely.
And talk about the time frame on that one.
Oh man, I mean, if you really want to know the specifics and details of that art project, I can give it to you. Not just about what I did, but also how I felt about it.
Oh yeah, okay.
In 2010, I got that project, and I get an email from this company called Nexus Productions, and they say, "Hey, we saw your work on the blog. We like your stuff. You want to work with us?" I said, "Sure, why not?" So we can't tell you anything about it. Sign this NDA, and we'll tell us your rate. All right. So okay, I have no idea what this is about. Here's my rate. It's like $70 an hour. This is back in 2010. But they said, "Cool, $70 an hour sounds good." And I signed the NDA, and they say, "By the way, this is a commercial for Coca-Cola, Super Bowl 2012. It's like, man, I could have asked for a lot more money.
Yeah, I'm thinking right now, they're like, sweet, this is good.
Yeah. Here's that project that comes in, and it's all email conversation. That's all it is. And they send, a prompt saying, "Hey, we need an orc design or a dragon or a weapon." And it would be a daily thing. And I would just draw and sketch it, and I would scan it, submit it, wait for feedback. There might be like one or two bits of feedback here and there. Can you change this? Can you change that? And I do it. Next day, they send me an email saying, "Hey, we're good. We'll send you another prompt for design." So, okay, I'm thinking, all right, sounds good. We'll keep moving on. I think I'm going to come back to it, maybe finish it, maybe paint it up. Keep in mind, this is just sketches and drawings, like only exploration. He would literally tell me, "This is our main dragon for the commercial. Could you design that for us?" I said, "Absolutely." Spent a day doing all these silhouettes and exploration. I sent it to them. It's like, "Cool, maybe we'll choose this one, finalize that best you can." I just did like a side view, one value painting. And then I got an email back saying, "That's great. Let's move on, do something else." So this went on for about a week, 7 days, where it just was sketching, and they would like approve a couple things. I mean, literally, it was an email saying, "We did an ice sculpture of a dragon. Can you draw that for us?" I would spend maybe a couple hours drawing it, send it over to them saying, "We're done. Cool, move on, next thing." It was nonstop, constantly moving forward.
Man.
I'm confused because I think maybe they don't like my stuff. It's like, what's going on? I mean, do they want to just get some ideas and maybe do something else with it? Well, so 7 days, I'm doing this, sketching back and forth. And at the end of the 7 days, like, "Cool, we're done. We got everything designed. Talk to you later." I didn't hear didn't hear from them all the way for a year afterwards until the next Super Bowl came around. And I sit there watching the game, and the commercial comes up, and I recognize my designs. And I'm thinking to myself, how the hell did they take my loose sketches and actually get production level finish models and animation out of this thing? I was confused for so long. They paid fairly well. Again, they paid on time and everything. It was a good, fun experience. And why I liked it so much is because all I had to do was draw. All I had to do was. So that was definitely a highlight because it was such minimal work and the return was so high. And of course, at the end of the day, the result of the product was amazing. What's funny is that a couple of years ago, literally maybe a year and a half ago, a student comes up to me saying, "Hey, by the way, did you see this on YouTube?" And it was a video of the making of that commercial. It was called Coca-Cola. And it was made by Pixelogic, and they did all the work for it. And in that video is a making of, and you can see my sketches and drawings in there, and they will show you the high-res models and everything. I still don't know how they took literally loose sketches and modeled from them and fully painted them too. It still blows my mind. So,
beast.
Yeah, it was fun.
Take minimal information and model it into something amazing. But yeah, that's awesome. because I wanted to hear that story just because of like you were just doing the designs and wanted to hear how fast you had to kick those things out.
Oh,
So it was just a sprint for a week basically.
It really was.
And then that's it.
Their deadline was so short; things had to be done really immediately, fast. And I could tell there were some, translation and alters happening to the final result from the drawings that I literally gave them. But still, they were relatively close to what I had, which was still pretty funny to me. So, yeah, definitely a strong highlight. But also, I use it as an example about the types of work that can come in freelance-wise that potentially could be high profile, but then also in the working method while you're doing it. Can be sometimes confusing based on communication. You don't know exactly what you're doing, and then you try to problem solve it, and then the responses can be a little bit weird at times too. So that one was a weird experience, but a fun one, and also a great result.
So last thing, and then we can move on. But so technically, what was the company you worked for then that did it? Was that a different middleman agency then?
Yeah, it was essentially middleman. There was Coca-Cola, obviously, that wanted that was the client, and of course you had middleman, which was
Nexus
production, and then they contacted several artists, I believe, to bring them in to help them design.
Yeah, that happens to us, or happens to me at work all the time too. So that's interesting. So now I'm going to go look up the middleman agency too. So even they're like passing it through like 2 or 3 sets of people to get to the CGI artists over at what you call it. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's not uncommon that you do a commercial and you have like effectively 3 clients. You have the client who would be your Coca-Cola, and then you have whatever ad agency that they hired.
Yeah,
they have a lot of input and a lot of creative vision, and then you generally have the director that they've hired.
Right.
So that's like
creative director.
Totally, but oftentimes that's like even a third party outside of the ad agency, like especially for a featured commercial, they'll hire a David Fincher or whoever it might be, and then you have your creative director in house. So it's
right for sure.
You got like 4 people that you gotta please.
It takes some getting used to. I'll tell you that.
My favorite is when you get the director and the ad agency just going head to head, like they just don't agree. It's like, how do you resolve this?
You just listen to it over the conference call, and it's like, we'll just let them suss this out. Let's let them suss this out for a couple minutes, and they come through it, and they're like, yeah, let's just do this, and we're like, and then you're just like, yeah, sounds great. We'll go with that.
Then you get Coca-Cola saying something real lame, like, well, we like the polar bears, and
then all 3 other creative agents are like, okay, just
you're back to version 1.
Yeah.
Actually, I'll post up a link on the chat on the YouTube channel of the link of the making a video.
Oh, perfect. Awesome. Put that in the show notes. Yeah, great. Thank you.
And while you do that, I'm gonna tell the story of so I was following Peter for a while on Instagram and stuff, and then a couple of years ago I went to CTN, and I'm walking by and I look, and they had the hallway, and to the left there was this room, and Wacom had a bunch of Cintiqs set up there, and then like Google had their Google Cardboard set up, and all kinds of stuff was happening. And in the middle there's this thing, and there's this dude just talking and drawing just as fast as he was talking. And he's like, just do like this, like plane here, put a plane there, and then just like this. And then all of a sudden there's a person, and he goes, but then if we're moving on, like, let's do a tank. And he drew a box, and legit 5 seconds later, it was this tank with turrets and guns and all this. And I'm like, how is this kid throwing down like that? And that leads to a question that we just got from Landon on Instagram. He says, and let's fast forward a couple years later, Jack and I are at Ground Zero. We ended up going to have dinner with Peter. And watching him do his sketchbook is ridiculous. If you guys ever get a chance to watch Peter throw down live, do not hesitate. I beg of you, do not hesitate. So all that to say,
to what?
From Landon, hey, what's up? Got a question for Peter.
Okay.
Don't want to forget. From seeing you draw, by the way, Landon was with us when we went to dinner with Peter. He said, from seeing you draw, does it look? It doesn't look like you put down any pencil. Why is this? From seeing you draw, it
Translate
doesn't
it
look
first.
like. Hang on, it doesn't look like you put any pencil down before you ink. How? Like, really? WTF? I don't understand. Haha. Do you have a way of starting each drawing that helps this process?
Sounds just like Landon.
Yeah, of course. And again, like I said, I won't make this too long-winded, but I get this question all the time. And of course, I get a lot of questions that expand on that, that also then ask me, hey, do you look at these kinds of people? Do you look at, do you imprint on that essentially? And I'm sure you guys can think of certain artists. But for me, specifically, when I go in this approach, yes, I am going straight in. I don't do any lanes anymore. I don't need marker. I don't need pencils. I go straight in and draw what I want. Does that mean, though, I'm exactly drawing what is in my head, what I visualize? No, I'm not actually. What it is that I have a general feeling and a direction or even an action, a story. It is not a picture. It can almost be like I said, an actual emotional response to something even too. And based on that feeling, I then have like, okay, well, if let's say two characters are fighting against each other, well, what are they wearing? What's the culture? What's the action? What's the pose? What's the camera? I think about stuff, but there's no direct image. Keep that in mind. Because I think when people start drawing at a young age, they want to capture what they see in their heads. And that's never going to work because you're never able to actually fully capture what you have because things in your brain are constantly morphing around. So in the first minute of your drawing, let's say you draw for half an hour, that image in your head is going to alter and change. So it's never going to be the same. So this doesn't really ever hit your expectation in a way. And that frustration can be very much toxic, obviously. So for me, I roll away. So I say, I know what I want in terms of feeling. I know the elements of what I want to go for also. And then I work in the sketch and drawing and adapt with it. So the end result in a way captures the feeling of it, but it's in no way a direct image of what I have in my head. A lot of the stuff is preemptively thought out, strategized as to like, well, what do I want? What is the camera? What is the angle? What am I trying to shoot for? And even if it doesn't necessarily fully, encapsulate everything I want to, as long as I'm really enjoying trying to problem solve that, the end result doesn't really matter to me because I know I can even draw it better the next time. And that's really the case too, is that any drawing that I've done, if I wanted to draw it again, I could probably draw it 10 times better now that I have some sort of plan in my head. So how do you then train for something like this? Well, for me, everything was based on how you observe the world. Observation of everything around you, from people to animals to the environment to actions and functions and nature to smells to everything. Everything is some sort of influence to me, inspiration also. And training your eyes and your brain to absorb information this way is not easy, but if you simplify the world, then you can output this level of confidence in the work you want to go for. So that's what it really is, essentially. Simplification, then observation, then adaptation.
And one of the magic words that you I always hear you say is shape. Break it down into shapes.
Absolutely. I mean, it's everything in terms of what I do. And I think that's everything based on any creative artist does, in any creative outlet, potentially. Even if it's like product design, transportation design, entertainment design, everything is based on constructs of forms. And the shape, you can simplify and understand how to construct it, but then also thinking about, well, what do those shapes mean, right? Shapes have meaning. You could attach a verbal word to a visual form. There's context, and you can tell a story. So choosing shapes is extremely vastly important to help build the foundations to then be more confident to express those things also. So for me, what I teach is, yes, a foundational class, but I think it's also one of those things that sticks with you for your lifetime of being able to help communicate and tell stories, whether it's quick sketching or final pieces or product that you're creating. And that's, for me, everything.
Wow. So if it's based on how you feel, at times, when you're drawing, are you kind of thinking 2 or 3 strokes ahead, but then that notion always changes on the fly based on if you had to do a shoulder pad or something because another thought comes in your head, so you switch directions. So when you look back halfway through, it's almost like viewing the drawing for the first time, or as it's drawing, because you don't have a picture in your head of it, so it's kind of moment to moment or stroke to stroke.
Yeah. I think a good way to put this, I went to go see this artist, and I don't know if you guys know his name, Katsuya Terada. I don't know if you guys know who Terada is. Japanese illustrator, a lot of comics animation back in the day. He's still very prevalent right now. He's one of my favorite Japanese artists currently right now. And he comes to LA maybe twice a year or something like that. He comes and does live drawings and sessions.
Mm-hmm.
I watched him one time, and he was obviously taking Q&A questions and stuff. And I asked him a question about what is he thinking as you're putting those lines down, because he's drawing live in front of us. And what he replied and said is exactly how I feel and how I think. To him, drawing is like writing. So words, or I guess even a letter, is a line. Letters can formulate words, and the words can form sentences and essays, and they can be poems eventually too. But the words and the words that you use in combination can express in different ways. So each line in the current moment can then adapt and move in different directions as you're doing it. So there is no forward thinking of like 2-3 steps ahead. It's more like you do it in the fly. That's why when most artists say it, they're like, this is just what I do. Well, they don't know what that really means, but for them, it's like, I'm able to make the decision at the very moment, you know?
So it's in the moment. Okay, cool. Awesome. And that's a badass artist. Terada's a badass artist. I have a couple of his books, of his art books, like spend the time searching out those books. And he has a sketchbook that's like,
massive, 1,000 pages.
Massive. It's like, and that I picked up too. It's awesome. It's a great work.
And he's one of those artists that I used to imitate back when I was in college and high school days. I would draw just like him because I loved his lines, his shapes, his animals. And I would just draw much, very similar to him. So huge influence.
Yeah, check his stuff out too. It's great.
Yeah, Terada.
Yeah, Terada's good.
Do you come from creative folks?
Well, I think I do. I'm not really quite sure how creative my family or parents could have been, because they never actually were able to, one, have the opportunity or necessarily the environment to push that. So I feel personally a lot of it comes from my father's side. So my own dad, my uncles, grandfathers all had that, I think, creative potential. My dad used to draw, and so did my grandfathers. My uncles, one of them was really into music. And I know all of them had that chance, that potential to, if they really delved into it and sat down and really explored it, they probably could have made something from it too. But of course, as immigrants coming from Korea back in the 70s and 80s, they came in and they just had to establish themselves and start working. So they never really had that chance to do so, which gave me and my generation then the opportunity to do so. My brothers, actually, in my opinion, I feel they also could have potentially have done something creative if they really wanted to. But their focus and interest was somewhere else. So out of my entire family, me and my immediate, I'm the only one that really pursued it at a professional level. So it's there, it is there, but no one's really taken full advantage of that side. Yeah.
And as a child of immigrants, I think it's important. One of the things that you said was that, say, your parents never really had, how can I say it, a fair shot at actually following up with their creative potential.
Right.
Have you run into any kind of difficulties or anything like that in your upbringing with that?
I mean, that's something I was actually literally talking about maybe like 2-3 hours ago, because I just finished up an online class today. And that's a 3-hour session. We do like Q&A just like this. I have a group of people that are there and we're talking. And this conversation actually just came up. And whenever I talk and I do lectures and I do sessions and Q&As, it's conversations not just about art, but also about lifestyle and also about life in general. In this particular part of it, I like to get into mainly because I recognize how not necessarily lucky I am, but I don't take things for granted because of it. I recognize the benefit of the environment I was in. Growing up, I know and I can see it within other students, within other artists, that they didn't have that environment that really encouraged that side of creativity or exploring something that you wanted to do. It didn't matter what it was, just something you want to do, And so for me personally, since birth, I mean, I said it all the time, but my first memory of being even a human being is of drawing. Nice. 4 years old, my grandfather would drawing birds for me on paper. I still remember this day. It was a huge impression. From like 4 to 5, I was just drawing nonstop. I would literally hide under tables and just sketch and draw. But through my entire life up to now, I'm 37, I have never had anybody, from friends to coworkers to professional or personal family, ever say no whatever I did. No one ever said no. You can't do that. You can't do this. No one ever said that. And that wasn't even part of my environment.
Huh.
So in a way, what I said to my students is, I was set up to succeed. I was set up not to fail, you know?
Yeah.
But I understand how fortunate I was for that. You know, I could have, you know, not even recognized it and become an egotistical asshole potentially. But like, I recognize that a lot of people encouraged and recognize that potential and direction, and also the drive that I needed to do it, even at a young age. I mean, I knew what I wanted to be when I was 10. I mean, I wanted to have dinosaur bones and draw dinosaurs. I just drew dinosaurs all the time. So, here's what to do, honestly. And then I realized comics.
I'm like, mission accomplished. You be killing them dinosaurs, boy.
I'm still drawing dinosaurs today. I'm still drawing comics today. So what I was doing at 5 to 10 is still something I do right now. So I haven't lost sight of the, not just the passion and the drive, but the excitement and joy of just doing it. You know, whether it's for work or not, I'm still going to do it because that's what I want to do. And no one has to know, you know, and that's, I think, massively important. Your environment does shape you in a way. You know?
Sure.
Of course, individually, who you are, it makes a difference too, how you're wired, how you absorb information. But your environment also does affect you. So for me, it was a very positive environment. Well, I mean, positive, but there were a lot of other things as families, and you go through life, a lot of things can happen too. But those losses and the things that you think of negatively at the moment can also be very positive things in the future. So every time I look back and I think on everything on my life, there isn't a moment being like, man, I wish that didn't happen, or I regret this. Never in my life have I thought that. So, you know, I run into students all the time, and they tell me about their anxieties and the depressions and the personality things they go through because of not having any kind of support. It's something I sit down and I listen to, but it's also hard for me to really empathize with sometimes as well, because I don't know what that feels like. And that's also kind of troubling for me, because, man, I wonder how hard it would have been if someone, even anybody, just said, no, you can't do this. So that's why I definitely say always thank not just my parents, but it's everyone behind me, which is all like instructors. I mean, teachers from like the 7th grade all the way up through my college years, there was always somebody in every single year that just kind of said, that's awesome, keep doing this. And they would guide me, even if it's a minimal degree, to like, go this direction, try this, try that. So that's why I think I was kind of almost tailored to do what I'm doing now, which is education and teach. I'm in that position in the platform where I'm able to give back that same level of energy and drive that was given to me, not because I asked for it, but because they wanted to do it, you know? That's the reason why I teach in the first place, because I want to do it, not because I feel like I have to in a way. And I think that's a huge part of where I am right now. Yeah.
And I want to touch on a little thing that you said. You kind of slid it in there, but I need to point it out because we talk again. I have 148 of these shows, so there's a lot of things that need the importance of repetition.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You might be super talented, but if you're a jerk, nobody's going to want to work with you. And let me tell you, when I first saw you live on stage doing your thing, I was like, this guy is magnificent. And then when we were at Ground Zero, I saw you and I was nervous because you're so good that I was like, he's probably an egotistical asshole. and then you're like,
really,
you were super cool, and you were the one that was like, hey, how's the show going after this? Do you want to go get some drinks? And I was like, oh yeah, totally. I'm trying to play it off all cool and stuff. I went up to Jack. I was like, after the show, we're gonna go have drinks with Peter Hahn. I'm about to die inside.
Jack, can you say it like that? Losing
yeah. So it's.
I mean, wait a minute. Stop. Wait. Yo, who made that?
Is that the first time around? Come on, get out of here.
No, I heard it before. I'm just.
Look at.
I love it.
Amber said, "Ha ha ha! Tell him."
Awesome.
Amber's. She's gonna come on the show in a few weeks too. She's another just killer.
People with your talent,
like
she's a killer.
She's a killer, and she was super cool. So anyway, I think it's always important to keep that humbleness. It doesn't matter how good you get. It doesn't matter how successful you are. Right when you lose your way, right when you step out of line and you're not true to who you are, it's going to come out, and people aren't going to want to hang out with you.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Be cool.
I mean, I think a part of it I leave with other students is surround yourself with the people you want to, you know? Who you surround yourself with is that environment that you are creating for yourself. And that can instill more drive and encouragement and back and forth, and a creative environment that makes you want to keep going. But if you can't control your own environment, it gets really tough and you hit a lot of walls, you know, as you move forward. So.
And I think that's another very important point. Going back to another thing that you said, where people get sad and because they're not getting the feedback, or they're not getting however many hearts on Instagram, whatever it takes. Here's a word of advice. You're doing it for the wrong reasons if that's what you're doing it for. So if you're creating art and it's making you sad, unless the art that you're making is specifically built to invoke that emotion, then maybe you need to change your environment, like Peter said, because what we do, good, bad, ugly, if it takes you a long time, whatever the case may be, you have to do it for the right reasons. It has to invoke a feeling within you that then will be shown to the world.
Right. I mean, the things that you produce, whether it's for the career, for the financial means, for the popularity, those are the results of you controlling that environment. But if that's the primary reason, then the environment then won't reinforce that either. So it's got to be a result of it. So yes, can you be successful being an artist? Of course you can. You know, can you become, you know, whatever it is, if you want to be popular or recognized or acknowledged for those things? Of course you could be too. Not guaranteed, but those are results of things that can happen based on your drive and effort and passion that you invest into. Then no matter what, even if you didn't get those things, you're still going to feel fine, you know?
Right. Do it because you can't help but to do it. Mm-hmm. But right when you are looking for others, and this is something that I think all of us have had to learn. When you're creative, sure, that outside feedback is helpful,
right?
But sure, it's not always going to be. For me, whenever I make something, I think I would hate more to get that pity, good job feedback.
No, yeah, that would
than
hurt.
Someone just lighting me up saying, "Look, what were you thinking here?" I would rather have that. I would rather have that than someone saying, "Oh, that's really cute." Well, if it was that damn cute, why don't you buy the T-shirt?
Nice. Look at you going in. Yeah. Because then if they give you that honest feedback, when they do have that reaction where it's like, "Yo, this is really good," because they have a history of giving you, you know, the like, "Yo, not quite it," you know, but "Oh, this is really good." Then for a little bit, if they give you that good feedback after that, it feels like cool. There's a little bit of progression there, a little bit, because they've created a environment where it's constructive criticism and they're actually having a legit response, you know.
You know, I think when it comes to like feedback, like you're talking about right now, I mean, educationally, you start to understand trends and see what's happening. And even for you guys right now, doing these podcasts, you're interacting with people that are out there, you know, internationally, locally, and they're young kids, the people that are potentially older. So you're looking at their work and giving them, you know, obviously information. But, you know, now that I've been teaching, 7.5 years at Art Center and several locations here in LA, and also doing workshops and lectures all over the world, I've been interacting with people, you know, from all walks of life, from people that are just starting, from people that are intermediates, and professionals as well too. So this whole side of feedback is interesting. It's changed quite a bit, because even Carlos, what you're saying is that, yeah, you want to get that hard, you know, wake up to what's going on reality wise, and just kind of pay attention to what you're doing. That harsh feedback is important. That's what we had back in the day also. But what's crazy and what's interesting is that the trend of education is that the people and the exposure of this information to the wide audience of kids that are out there is getting more exposed. So you have a lot more younger and younger people that know what this is. So you come into places like Art Center, right now the median age is like 18 years old. Where when I came into Art Center, the median was 24, you know?
Wow.
So from 18-year-old to 24-year-old, that's a massive difference in maturity. And also from like 18 to 21, you know?
Right.
So you have this kind of traditional hard education feedback that you're given to like 18, 19-year-olds coming out of high school. You know, yes, it's harsh and it breaks them, but the problem is I'm afraid of like where some of these get broken too much and you're unable to actually put them back together. You know, the education, you want to break them down so you can build them back up. That's always been the mentality. But the problem is it's so shattered that the pieces are so broken, it's hard to put them back together to do it. I've seen some of these kids and they're fragile, man. They're like shaking leaves. And any word put to them, they're so sensitive to it, it's hard to give feedback on time. Which is why I'm more to the side of encouraging feedback. It's like, focus on the positivity. Right. There, yes, are things going wrong. Let's focus on that too. But we have to. I want to show you that if you can't see the positive side to your own work, no matter how you feel about it, and you only focus on the negative, then there's no way you're going to progress. You know. So it's always about mindset, if anything else. So when I do feedback, I focus less on. Don't worry about the end result. How did you start it? What are you thinking of? What are you trying to go for? What is the intention? We'll focus on that part of it, and your results will get better. You think less on that expectation.
Yeah, I can totally sentiment that, and I think that always goes into something that we talk about on the show a lot, and it's, you know, love the process, not the product. You know, and you do have to fall in love with the process, and not just for those, you know, those reasons unknown, but it's also kind of what you said, and you kind of are teaching yourself to detach from the criticism and not take stuff personally, because at the end of the day, I mean, it is a task. It is something repeated. It is a behavior, and most likely, I mean, that's why you're in school is that you want to do this professionally and day to day. And you know, that's part of the process. Is no matter how good whatever you do is, like, you could just not make something that's beautiful that 9 million people would hang on their walls. But if you know you didn't meet the expectations of that project, or, you know, the guidelines or whatever that creative director was hoping for that, you know, you're going to get notes, good or bad or otherwise. You're going to get notes. Like the whole part of being in the commercial art field, you know, is not just for yourself, and that you do have to sort of detach yourself from criticism, because once you move past criticism and critiques, it just becomes part of the daily grind, and it's just it's you know, hitting notes and progressing forward. Yeah.
I remember. It's funny you talked about this, and I want to ask you more questions about your time at Art Center.
Yeah.
But teaching at the college level myself for 5 years, I think I felt like I saw the switch in the type of student you would get in, because you talked about how fragile and frail they are, and I have colleagues that are still teaching now, and they notice how the students are coming from high school, if that will, mindsets and stuff like that, and how they question things and stuff like that. It was even different from when I was teaching, that like you have to really ask yourself as an art instructor, like how do you do that fine balance, you know? Because I think I had a little bit more harsher way of teaching, but I also mixed it in with a lot of humor, a lot of sarcasm and stuff like that, to lighten the load when doing a lot of the modeling and stuff for video games and all that good stuff. I was very direct, and knew Charlie was direct, and knew Charlie didn't play, but at the same time, it was never so that they was unapproachable, but at the same time, they respect the love for the craft that I had. They really tell that I really, really loved what I did. So that way, that any kind of harsh critique came out of like a thing of like, well, Charlie critiques his own stuff like this too, but at the same time, it's kind of funny, you know. But at the same time, I would have a notepad, you know, at my station, like behind the critique or whatever, where I would like have everybody's name or whatever, and I would give a mark of like critiques that I would do for different students and stuff like that. But then also knowing I would throw a bone of like, yo, this is pretty good. This is pretty good too. And every once in a while, you would have those great moments in a quarter where a student that was like decent or mediocre or whatever, and they would do a project that was like, yo, it hit the mark. And then those are the times where you choose to build up, right? At the times after all the harsh, like Charlie's being a dick today, like he's being an ass, but like he's right, but he still is a dick, you know. But like this time, I'll be like, yo, you did this. this is what I'm talking about. Now I can go die a happy person. And it'll make them feel like, yeah, cool. Now if the next one sucks, I'm ripping you a new one. But like this today, for right now, we in a happy spot. Everybody, and people, and I think a lot of kids gravitated toward that too, where it's like where they know, like, yo, that was kind of cool. And then at the end of the class or as they leaving or whatever, you get real serious and be like, yo, that was really good. That was really good today in class. Just to let them know that like it's not all about me trying to find every little thing, But I've had people now even where it's getting harder because like I don't know if it's just the way the world is right now, but like there's some like I have a buddy of all of ours, Tyrus, who gave me a talk to me about a year and a half ago when he started doing teaching again, and he was like giving a critique or talking to somebody, and like the girl just kind of broke down a little bit, in terms of like she said, don't worry, this is how it is. I just when I have serious conversations, I just have to cry it out. and like Tyrus, Jack and Carlos, and he was literally taken back like, no, all I was saying was like, just let me know if you're gonna be late for class, Like he wasn't even giving a crazy critique, and he was like, Charlie, the demographic of like students, and then how fragile, as you would say, is way different than even when you were teaching. Like it's just a new. I've had to come up with new ways of approaches because, like, you don't want to go too far, and I don't know if that just speaks to how we are right now as a population.
For me,
it's interesting.
I mean, the response is different because I first and foremost don't give off an intimidating pose, right? I don't look scary for kids. I look like they're students essentially. I walk into a classroom, it's like, oh, when's the teacher coming in? It's like, oh, I am the teacher actually. So that kind of stuff happens all the time. But it's more in the fact that when they get to know me, they don't want to disappoint, right? When you start to invest in want to disappoint you. That's the kind of thing I use a lot of times right now. What's also interesting in terms of trend is what's changing dramatically, and I'm sure it's a big prevalent thing that you guys might even want to discuss or do discuss, which is the change in strength and gender, what's going on right now, especially in the industry, but also educationally. It's really interesting to me. And this has only happened within the last 3 or 4 years. I would say about 85% of my students currently right now at Art Center are all female. Okay?
Really? Wow.
Really, really cool. Because in actuality, they're really good too. They are smashing. A lot of the guys I have in there, and they're so amazingly talented and skilled. And so I talk a lot about that in my class also. This idea of like, okay, you guys are now coming in, you're going to be the forefront. You have to really think about, really taking control of your directions and such. And for a lot of the guys that are coming in, I find that they're the ones that are being a little bit very hesitant and very, very scared about saying certain things at the moment too. This sense of equality is starting to kind of, again, be starting to erode. It was shifting in one direction right now where it was very much male dominated. And now it can potentially shift the other way around too. And we're looking for a balance of things, right? We're people, we're human. It's all about everybody. So everyone has to have their say. Everyone has to have their chance. Everyone should have their equal say in that stuff. So it should definitely swing in one pendulum to another, but it's got to balance out at some point. So I hope for these younger kids that are coming in that, again, they don't feel as if they don't have the right to be able to say what they want to say, or feel what they want to feel, So I want to try to treat with them individually and also in groups. And so it's really interesting to see what's going on educationally at the moment because that's the tone of what goes on in the professional field.
Do you think that's a natural shift, or is I don't want to say it's deliberate, but do you just think it's more of a natural shift, or is it based off the trend of we're creatures influenced by our surroundings and by things that happen, and that's what it is, because that's such a big shift at Art Center than before.
A lot of variables. One, naturally, I think it's going that direction. One, because of obviously social media, obviously internet, exposure information, the number of people that are now becoming more aware of things too, and the youth, they're getting more exposed to the information faster and faster. So things are going to shift and change much faster because of that too. And so the wave of going up and down is quite dramatic. But what's interesting is you would predict that things are going to happen like, 3 or 4 years going to be like that. But now it's like you can see it happen right in front of you.
Wow.
Very great. Yeah.
And I think it's just in society in general, because we have been ingrained for so long that this is the way that it was supposed to happen. Back in the days, to like jump on the demographic that you're talking about going to school. back when I was a kid, if you were 24 and a young lady, you're like married and having kids. And I grew up in the Midwest. So, and that was the thing, right? You went to school, you graduated high school, you went to college. After college, you got married, had kids, and then you moved on. And it was still kind of that dynamic where the guy was the main breadwinner and the lady stayed home with the kids. But then it started shifting, and now it's not that one voice is louder than the other. It's everyone now has the same voice. And so now everyone has a voice, and as people, we're not used to that, right? So like right now, I'm talking, you guys are listening and taking in what I'm saying. That's what humans do. Whereas if all of us were to go in on whatever topic right now, all at the same time, we would lose everyone that's watching live right now, because they're like, this is too much. And that's what we're getting used to as a society is, oh, okay, I didn't know that by me saying that was going to affect you in that way. So let me adjust. And we as people are learning how to do that. And it feels a little bit hard because we're not used to it. And change is never easy.
But I think it's also on top of where things are changing and the noise is becoming unequal in a way. There's too much noise, you know. It's
right. Yeah,
there is so much noise.
Yes, there's a bunch. I'm waiting for it to die down.
Yeah, and that's just it. Like, and you're starting to see it too. That's why people are starting to step away from the Twitters. They're starting to step away from the Facebook, because it's a lot, and we're literally only human. We can only, like, I forget right when I went to say the name, there's a number that I think it's 150. A human can only handle 150 relationships that actually matter, right? Well, go on Facebook, you got 6,000 people following you and seeing what you're about to say about the president or whatever it is that you're going to share. There's only so many damn cat videos you can watch.
Yeah, you're talking about the Dunbar's number.
Dunbar
Yeah.
I know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, interesting stuff that's going on right now.
Peter, with that being said, how does that affect, since we know that Art Center is known for pumping out amazing artists and the curriculum and stuff being not for the faint of heart, how does that affect this faculty and the professors at Art Center to still keep up that great level of quality and of work? And is it just more so focusing on the positivity and stuff like that, or would you still say it's just as hard as it was? But are the student body's work that's coming in, second part of that question, is the student body's work even better since they're coming in younger, or is it seeming like it's harder, or you have to feel like you have to build them up more because they're younger?
I mean, there's multiple parts to this. I mean, we'll talk about first generally Art Center right now. I'm in no way advocating that Art Center is the best place ever.
Okay,
I'm not saying that.
No problem.
When I teach, even though I teach there, I have a lot of students that are high school people that come up and say, do I have to go to a place like this? And I tell them, no, you don't have to go to a place like that, because even if you went to Art Center, there is no guarantee of you getting a job, you know?
For sure.
You get your diploma, piece of paper, and that's it. You're out there, you have to find your own thing. So, I mean, that's the reality of life, of course. So that means any education you get, I don't care where you go, what you put into it is what you get. So even at a place like Art Center, yes, can it be hard? Absolutely. But can people coast? Yes, they can too. So what you put in is definitely what you get out. So Art Center provides you the platform and the opportunities, but there are many students that don't take advantage of certain things either. That being said, do Art Center students push hard still to this day? Absolutely, for sure. I see it all the time. They're up nights working nonstop. They're full-time students. And are they getting younger? Yeah, for sure. But still, technically, are they hitting entry-wise and exit-wise at a high caliber level? Well, I would say entry level wise, it's not going to be as strong as it used to be because they are younger. But the exit, in terms of what's coming out from there, is it still at a good quality? Yes, technically. But I use that word very specifically, technically. These kids that are coming out at 21, 22, up to about maybe 24 at Art Center, technically are all amazing on every department of Art Center. The issue and the problem right now is that they lack personal life experience. So what's happening in Art Center, any other school right now, is that you have molds and they're just stamping them out, production line, you know? So all these kids are looking the same. For one, you're not mature enough to know where to take this stuff and express things because you have nothing to say, really. So you're going to take the opinion of the instructor or the department and they want to tell you what to do, because right now, most students want to ask me, like, tell me how to do this thing. What should I try here? Like, tell me what to do, essentially. That hand-holding is a very big part of what's going on. I'm not saying that's specific. It's very kind of more, you know, generalization, but still it's something I see all the time. Again, fear is a big part of it. And fear is the aspect of like, one, am I going to get that job? I don't want to disappoint my parents. I don't want to disappoint myself. There's so much competition. So all this burden and weight is sitting on top of them. And honestly, I would not want to be a student in this day.
Right.
Oh, no.
In Art Center currently. Again, is it just as hard? For sure. But they make it hard for themselves or they make it easier for themselves. And definitely if they come out and they think smart and they're questioning things and looking in different perspectives, not just kind of following the rails as to what a department or a curriculum sets for you, follow it to a certain degree, but then ask questions of, well, what can I try over this side? Maybe I want to try this industry over here. Because at the age of being 18 to 21, the idea is to experiment, to try things, to fail, to see what's possible, and expose yourself to different things that can happen within the industry, creatively of any type. I've had a few students, a handful of them, to be able to transfer, like, okay, I started an illustration, I didn't know what to do. Then I realized, wow, there's this thing called product design or transportation design or fashion design. I'm going to go over there and check what that out is. So they do it and they transfer, they explode just in terms of like their growth. It's amazing. So, I mean, that's definitely what's going on right now at Art Center. Still, again, I wouldn't say it's the best place, but it does produce good things right now still.
Yeah. That's so cool because it just sparked something in me thinking that the level of talent is so much younger now because of the free dissemination of information that like I wanted to know, because they're coming out as 21, you know. If they're very young. I mean, even at my job, we have hired on an intern for the first time. We plucked him from Savannah.
Yeah,
and he's great. He's doing great jobs. It's the first time him being in a big city and living in a big city for the summer and stuff like that. But like the level of stuff that he's been exposed to up here and learning in other programs and stuff like that, that's not in the bubble of Savannah, you know, as great as that school is like eye-opening. And so I'm trying to think, you know, the teacher I get to put back on my head. I'm like, cool, if they're so much younger now, like what should they be doing in between? Like to get those life experiences to say,
right.
I've said, because we've set up for him projects and stuff like that he's had to do. He has to finish and he has to do. So he's going to have artwork and he's going to have stuff to show. We have a big, huge projection mapping like event that we have for him in the community. It's like we have a bunch of things where we're like, this is yours. You need to present it. You need to show me your view and your take on this. Create that board. Create that deck. You know, well, we already know what it's going to be. I'm like, but they don't know. You know what it's going to be. So you need to present it to them. Like you need to tell them that this is where I'm at, so you don't go down a rabbit hole for. You know, he's getting so much life experience. Whereas he has friends in the city that are like, you know, has a stereotypical, you know, internship, but it's like type treatment. You know, it's not really preparing them to be free thinkers. I feel like he's going to go back and be a catalyst at school to be like, no, I'm just going to do it this way because this is how I feel. Because like I want to try this and think outside the box instead of saying, tell me what to do. You know, it's interesting because he's so young. So that's why I asked that.
But you know what? They're going to go through those rhythms anyways, because for us at the age we're at, we understand, you know, the things that are happening around us. It's easy for us to say. And you expect the younger kids to be able to understand that and all of a sudden adjust their point of view and to follow that also. But, you know, if I was in their positions, you know, if I heard that kind of stuff, they can understand, but that doesn't mean they understand how to actually use that or actually how to apply that into their life. So they're going to go through those similar kind of problems and issues that they would normally run into anyways. And they're going to have to just go through it, you know, and the whole weeding process, obviously, in the industry where you make it or you don't based on your level of skill and who you are as an individual. So not everyone's going to make it, unfortunately.
yeah, for sure.
So you were obviously killing it in your career. You're working for video games, and you accidentally happen to produce or to design a Super Bowl commercial, which not everyone can say. What happened in your brain that made you want to be a teacher?
I don't know how much you really know about like my prehistory before teaching, why I got into teaching, and who I got involved with. You know, for any of you guys over here, especially people out there that might be listening or will be listening to. But you know, I talk about this a lot within my own classes, and I bring up my mentors and teachers constantly too. I literally had this question earlier today in class, like as to why do you even teach in the first place? And I can start with this. In the beginning of my classes at Art Center or any other school, I always end the first day with this statement: I am here to teach you to become better than me. That is my goal in teaching. I want you to become better than me, because if I can train and teach you to become better than I am in turn going to try to drive myself to be better than you. All right, that's my goal. So the idea is to constantly level up the bar. And there are students out there that are, in my opinion, better than me in terms of skill set level wise, mindset wise. I mean, their drive and their passion is absolutely, you know, inspirational. So there are definitely a handful of students that have attained that, and I love seeing how they grow and succeed in their life. But you know, why am I doing what am I doing right now? Well, back in 2010, my instructor, my mentor, Norm Sherman, passed away. So he was actually shot in 2010 at a party. And he was a very close, you know, obviously mentor and a friend of mine. That word of mentor I'll come back to in a second, but I've known him since 2002 and up until 2010. I became close friends with him, his family, his kids. I've known his kids since they were like, you know, 4 and 7. And they're in college now, you know, so I'm also guiding them. One of the older boys are coming to Art Center. So I was actually tailoring their portfolio just recently last week. So, you know, I'm very involved with his family. But he took me under his wing. And that word of mentorship, I find to be a word that I don't use lightly.
Right.
I use too easily these days. I literally have people coming up to me saying, will you be my mentor? You know, can you be my mentor and stuff? It's like, and I tell them straight up, no, I don't want to be your mentor. That's not how it works. You know, to have an actual mentor is not a connection from teacher to student, but it's from human to human. Follow that person because you want to know about who they are, right? How they live their life, their lifestyle, but also their potential career. Norm was an individual not at a professional level, but as a man that I thought was absolutely just, you know, awe-inspiring. Because the way he led his life, the way he treated his family, his history, what he did, and how he just kind of came off was absolute confidence. You know? And I felt at the time in my 20s, I didn't have that. Of course, you know, in your 20s, you're still very unsure. And I was trying to find my way. And I was extremely introverted in my Art Center days. I had a core group of friends. I never went out, didn't even drink till I was 24. And Norm was the reason why I started drinking in the first place, because he tried to drink. I had to keep up as best I could. So
Jack didn't drink before he met me.
we got along really well together. And so, you know, I really kind of like imprinted off of him. And he would, I mean, a lot of my friends still tell me this today. They think that he was training me to do what I'm doing right now. Whether he did it consciously or not, I think that was his goal. So in 2010, after he was killed, Art Turner came to me saying, can you take over his classes in the summer? Because I'm doing right now. Now, up to that point, I had just started teaching. In end of 2009, Concept Design Academy in Pasadena, California, the school, the guy who runs the school emailed me saying, hey, we're looking for a sketch design teacher. Would you want to try it? And I actually asked Norm, my mentor, can I take this class of dynamic sketching and bring it into, you know, outside of Art Center, essentially? And he approved it. He said, yeah, do what you need to do. Go do it. So I taught a term, and then that's when he passed away. So then Art Center came to me saying, let's keep going. You know, can you fill his shoes? I mean, how could I say no? You know, that fell into my lap, and there was no way I could take that down. And so I had just started teaching. I was just starting to find myself. And all of a sudden, I'm teaching an Art Center class. And I'm like, oh, man, what am I going to do? My mistakes. My first 3 terms were rough because the very first time I started teaching, here were my mistakes. I kept thinking to myself, what would Norm say here? What would Norm draw in this sense? How would he react to this? I kept thinking of what he would react to. So for the first 3 terms, I was trying to like fill his shoes. And I realized at some point, it's like, I can't be him. I'm not him. So it's not about trying to be as good as him, but I got to just take it in my own direction, you know? I took his comment, and what I tell people now is like, you know what you guys are getting at the moment is an echo of Norm. and I'm adding that voice on top of that to communicate to you what he was trying to say. So is it, I guess, a semblance of what he was going for? Absolutely. And then, of course, I would break it down and try to find my own way to interpret it. And I think the main thing he left with me before he passed away was run with it. That's what he always told me, run with it. Whatever you took, educationally, inspiration-wise, take it and run with it. Make it your own thing, you know? So because of that, I think that was a huge part of why I started to teach more, but the sense of why I needed to give back, because of what he did was super selfless. He was an amazing human being. And I feel bad to this day that students at Art Center still will not be able to have him. But, you know, being close to the family, they're all saying, well, they have you now, you know? So that's a part of what it's about, the passing down of information. Education class that I teach, it's legacy is what it was. And the class that I teach right now, and people can see it from the outside as being a drawing, sketching class. But to me, it was a life class. You know, that helped me develop me as a human being way more than just about the technical aspects of drawing. It changed the way I looked at life in general. So I actually, you know, even like this books I put out, the Dynamic Bible, or the other classes I teach, and there are multiple instructors that teach what I do right now, because most of them were former students of mine. And there were many professionals in the field that have taken them too. So the kind of education that I teach is readily available. And I was very, very hesitant to get it out there because, again, for me, it was about the passing down of information, literally handing it down to the student. So I don't want it to like package it to be, you know, overly consumable or like a brand kind of thing in a way. But that's kind of what it's become, and that's what people recognize me for now. But I'm glad it's me, because now I can say it's because of him. You know, it came from
for sure.
So I think that's why it's important.
It's awesome.
Yeah, so that's the reason why I teach.
I like it. I never, for as much as I stalk you online, I don't think I ever heard that story.
Yeah.
And again, it's important who you surround yourself with.
Oh, absolutely.
If people aren't building you up, it might be time.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Dr. Phil.
Might be time.
Yo, I thought it was going one way. The abrupt might be time. Yo, I ain't gonna lie, it threw me, but okay. Yeah. Duly noted. Don't.
So now that you're established and you're constantly drawing, you're teaching, you're doing a lot of really cool stuff with your life. I'm going to go back to a question that Noel asked a little while ago. What would be your dream project?
Well, now at this point, I am doing my dream project, which is a personal project, right? I think any artist professionally will always hit that fork in the road and be like, do I work on my own thing, or do I stay with what I know and work in the industry still? For me, that came up in 2013. My last studio gig, which was Sony in San Diego, I was working with them contract-wise, and it was fun, but I realized at that point, it's like, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to work in a studio job. I don't like working on this stuff. And at that point, I was still doing Comic-Con and working my own things here and there, but I was never really fully invested into what I was doing. So after that, I made that choice. Like, okay, I'm teaching a lot now. You know, I've gone 3 years in. The studio gig was kind of drying up. I don't enjoy it. I gotta just go. And I just made that choice to then move into my own process. And of course, there was a lot of fear for the first 2 years because I don't know how I'm going to survive. How do I make money? You know, how do I live? So I took a few contract jobs, and teaching then became naturally more my primary gig at that point, which then gave me the opportunity to keep working on my own stuff. So the dream project would still be very much of my own stuff. But the dream of it is taking my own thing, my own idea, my own concept story, and being able to then develop it as a platform or a project that then helps, I guess, tell a story to help inspire others, and something that I can actually produce that is a finished thing that I can show off. And that could be at any level. It could be a comic, and I'm shooting for things like maybe TV shows and movies, and those are long-term things I would like to go for. But definitely it's something that I want to produce for me, essentially. Yeah. So hopefully that answered that question for you, Noel.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope so. I think you did.
I think you did. No, that was great. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to talk more about your personal project?
Well, I mean, I'm in mud deep in it right now, actually. More than likely after this podcast, I'll keep working on it right now too, because it's been an ongoing project for the last 2 years currently. It's funny because I'm working on something right now that is something I never wanted to really eventually do, but it's something I wanted to go for when I went to Art Center. When I went to Art Center, I actually wanted to be a comic artist. So I was hugely influenced by a lot of comic artists from here in America and of course over in Japan. And I thought comics were so cool. Back in the 90s, I was really into, obviously, the big guys like Jim Lee, huge fan of Joe Mad. Those kind of guys were huge trendsetters for me initially. And I was still a big fan of the big brands also, X-Men and Marvel and DC, whatever the case is. So I wanted to go into Art Center being comics, and I realized, oh man, it's not easy to make a living off of comics, actually.
At all.
Oh man. I was like, okay, you know what? Then I got exposed to design, video games, animation, all that kind of stuff. And that's when I jumped in that field. So now at this point, after 15 years, lo and behold, I'm back onto doing potential comics again. So, and it was a bit of a grudging feeling of like, man, do I really want to do this? And I can even tell you how this project kind of started. The original idea and the IP, which I call the Blacksmith, was literally born on Instagram. And by the way, I have an entire whole lecture on how I treat social media. I have a whole how I use it, why it's used this way, how I grew from it, and where it's at now. So I actually have lectures on social media at times. I feel like a lot of instructors and professionals don't talk about this enough, about what social media is, how they use it, and also how it enables them. Because I think a lot of them will use it and they feel like it's just a platform they should share stuff. And that's all it is for them. But for others, especially for independent artists, it's a business platform in a way too. Marketing, obviously. So this character is born on Instagram by chance. And I'm developing it and using then feedback from Instagram from people by saying, this is really cool. What is it? Is it a comic? Is it a story? Is it whatever the case is? So for me, boiling it down, social media is this. It's about the feedback and the data of information and the conversations you can have with your audience, your market. So you can present a project and you could potentially get feedback from it. And it could be comments of like, oh, that's kind of cool. Or like, what is this? And how did you draw that? What pen is it? And I get a lot of those kind of questions, but I don't really regard those as important. I'm looking for like, why are you doing it? What is it for? Can I buy this? Is it a story? Is it a comic? I'm looking for then curiosity as a product they can get. That's media. And if I present a project and they like it, some parts I don't, I drop it. If it's something that's hitting really hard, and I consistently post on that for months if I have to. And that's where I can then build an awareness towards a story. So right now, that's what I'm doing. I built it in 2014. People were really interested in it, stopped it, moved on to a different project. Now I'm back on developing this comic. But you know what? Making this comic, I was really hesitant. When I wanted to do a graphic novel for this Blacksmith, I was scared, actually. I didn't want to do this because, one, I knew I was not a writer. I was not, someone who could create dialogue. I could create the world for you and draw for you, but I'm not someone who can construct an entire storyline, So I was really scared of this project for the first, I would say, year, in 2017 or so. And I talked to 20, 30 artists, professionals, and friends, asking them all, like, what would you do in my situation? How would you treat a project like this? That's very personal. It's your own. And I have a lot of friends that are doing this. I think one person right now that's pushing their own story really well, but working very heavily, is Ryan Lang. Ryan is an artist and designer over at Marvel right now. The guy's amazing. And he's pushing his own story and pushing really hard on his own projects. And his Instagram is great and very inspirational to follow. But for me, I'm doing the same thing. I'm trying to push that side. At the end of the day, what everyone told me was this: you got to just do it yourself. Don't think about hiring a writer. Don't hire somebody else to treat that or that. Do it yourself and make that fail at it if you have to. First not come out very well. But the thing is, in that process of doing more of them, you might get better eventually. I mean, think back to any comics you read from the very first book to what they ended up, coming out towards. A lot of them started off really rough, So I kind of accepted that, and now I'm in the midst of actually just completely blocking out the book. Actually, right behind me, this is the entire project timeline of this book that I'm doing right now. So what I did, literally, I put up this big piece of butcher paper and I drew a horizontal line up there. And I marked off a bunch of points. And literally the beginning of the line says born, and at the end of it says death of a character. Okay, that's the end of the character. In between all these little sticky notes are individual booklets of his adventures and such. So a character going out searching for mythological weapons to bring back to a temple for safekeeping. And it's set in like 14th century Asia. So each of these small little sticky notes are weapons that I research in different parts of Asia, all over. And so every one of these is a potential book right now.
Right.
That this entire timeline up there, and now I know every aspect of when it happens, where it happens, and what he's going for. I literally had to sit down and just do this. So right now, I am actually working. I mean, I have a stack of all the pages right here.
Yeah, that's what we want to see. Yeah, go ahead, share your screen.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm gonna be selfish right now. all I've been waiting to say is like, yo, so let's see some samples. It sounds really interesting, but that's crazy.
I mean, man, this Comic-Con coming up, that's my goal right now. That's my my potential deadline just to get the project generally done. I'm not publishing it for Comic-Con. I'll be publishing it by the end of the year, but I just want to get it to share and to preview for Comic-Con then. If I share my screen, let me switch it.
Are you tabling at Comic-Con? I'm assuming you're talking about San Diego Comic-Con, but like, so you're gonna table there, and then that's like your big showing or preview for it, you know?
I do 2 years, 2 shows a year. I do one, which is San Diego Comic-Con, which is essentially my show that I share new things with. I launch projects, essentially. And then CTN, which is an animation expo that happens at the end of the year in Burbank, California, is my closer show, essentially. If I switch over, I'll just show my entire screen. Like this is a sample of the page of what I'm doing right now, right? So this is right now black and white. I do everything in analog. So everything with thumbnail, I find out all the story elements of it. And then I'm potentially going to be, well, I will be going into full color too. So this is just a sample page of it currently right now. I am working with a European publisher at the moment based out in Switzerland, and they push a lot of books out in France. So this will be potentially French published by the end of the year. I have a 3-book deal with these guys. And then on the US side, I'm distributing domestically myself. So I'll potentially start up a Kickstarter, where the case is. I mean, these are essentially all my thumbnails right here too. How I work essentially for this project was I had an entire sketchbook. This was a small little sketchbook like this one. Before I even did these pieces, I did small, tiny little thumbnails that structure out the entire story. After doing the entire book thumbnails, I then retake all those pages and I redraw them like this, a little bit larger. So I figure out the camera, figure out the dialogue, figure out everything. And I take these pages and I go directly into the finish. So the pages, I go direct ink. I don't pencil them. I don't do anything else. They go straight in. So that's pretty much my process. And
you're coloring these too, right?
Everything. So writing-wise, color-wise, everything I am doing currently. Yeah, so we'll see how it goes.
And what have you learned about yourself and about your drawing style after all these years?
Great question.
In terms of like you making a comic book, because obviously with comic books, like you have to draw the same thing a lot, the characters and stuff like that. You probably have had to adapt your style a little bit in order to do this, right?
In a way, yes, because when I was making the character, I was already kind of setting the style in 2014. So I created the idea of the character, started kind of previewing the story, and I would do these illustration moments of his adventure entirely in 2014. For some weird reason, in the year of 2014, I drew nonstop, like constantly. I could actually even show you what the project was. I'll just go to my Kickstarter right now. I put out a book in 2014 to 15, which is my personal sketchbook, and I produced it through Kickstarter. I went through a publisher, or not a publisher, but a printer out in Asia, and I put that out, and it did really, really well. But for some reason, that particular year, let me switch it over once I get it up. Give me 1 second. For some reason, that year, I just drew nonstop. And I think a lot of it was because I was seeing what other people were doing. I was highly influenced by them. This is the Kickstarter that I have at the moment, and this is a sketchbook that I put out. So in 2014-15, The Blacksmith was created. From morning till night, 365 days in that year, I drew constantly. And a lot of it was practicing in methods of brush pen. A lot of it was in methods of using camera, posing. And through that practice, this character was created. And I said, you know what, I'm going to make a Kickstarter, which is what I produced. So here I was essentially training myself to create this style, essentially. So right now, doing the comic, I don't really have to adapt because I trained literally for 6 months, even just by training with a tool. Just by training with one single tool, I was just drawing 6 months straight. And I got extremely confident with it. And so that means any of the pages I'm doing right now, I'm able to pump out in like 2 hours if I need to. So
that's
these are some of the
cool.
pages.
Wow. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So this particular year was the moment of the reason why I pushed really, really heavy on my own thing. But I can't necessarily tell you exactly why that spark happened. I mean, there's certain things that I think I have that I can't necessarily explain so easily. One of the things is about drive, and one word that my mentor used was hunger. My mentor was able to use that word constantly because he said he could tell hunger from students and people. And I kind of understand what he's talking about because, to be honest, this is a literal feeling of something that I can have. I feel that hunger, that energy. It's literally in my core, and I can pull from it anytime I want to. It's an endless bounding of energy. It's really weird. I can't, again, explain it to people to fully understand, but they think it's a high concept, ethereal thing. But this is a physical thing that I can actually feel. And in this year of 14, I pulled from it heavily. And so I was nonstop, just hammering away at drawings. And it felt good. It was really, enjoyable for sure. How do I switch back over to, there we go.
Yep.
But yeah, it's definitely interesting how that came about. So that Kickstarter did really well for me, and I made the book. And then this current year is when I'll come back into the comic. But so yeah, I was already set up to be able to do that. It didn't really take much effort to switch gears on it.
Nice.
Yeah. But no, comics is still tough.
Yeah.
I've never actually fully have professionally done a comic. And again, like I said, there was a lot of somewhat hesitation from this piece because I don't have any professional experience doing comics at all. But at the same time, I feel confident enough that, you know what, I'm going to just try. I know I can do it. And even if it failed, okay, I'm going to have to learn from that too and move forward with it. So we'll see how it goes. Right now it's down the line because Comic-Con's coming up real soon.
Yeah, it's coming up fast.
Oh my God. So I'm trying to get it done as quick as possible. It's crazy.
I mean, the interesting thing, and I think something takeaway maybe for somebody who's thinking about doing something similar, you didn't jump headfirst into totally unknown territories. I mean, you clearly have a skill and a confidence and a history with the drawing aspect. So, I mean, worst case scenario is this is a really amazing sketchbook that nobody wants to read. They just want to look at. But that's not even that bad. I mean, I bought a whole bunch of stuff when I was a kid that I never read. I literally only bought it because I liked the pictures, But like you said, best case scenario, or even a mid-brain scenario is that you learn from it, or it turns out really awesome, and then you're just expanding your skill set.
There's. Go ahead, Peter. Yeah.
Oh no! I was just gonna say it's like, for me, the enjoyment of doing it is definitely the huge part of it. And I mean, whether comic or not, I mean, I was gonna continue on this project anyways. But definitely so far at the moment, it's like, to be quite honest, yes, it's still been a struggle, like getting back into it and just kind of keep that ball rolling. And I'm very upfront about stuff, and people obviously want to put their best face forward. They want to come off by saying, "Oh yeah, this is easy. I'm doing all this kind of stuff." But it's not. It's actually very, very difficult. To maintain that visual and keep that ball rolling. This is something that, one, is a struggle because it's unfamiliar territory, as you said. And yes, it can be rewarding, but one, I haven't gone through that moment yet of that reward stage. So you're struggling at the pushing and trying to hard as much as possible. But man, the energy level you're trying to keep up to, it can be quite difficult. But like I said, that aspect of me pulling from that hunger is still very much there, which is why I'm still on it right now. So,
right. Yeah. This is one of the things I like about our show in general, is because we've talked to a lot of other artists. One artist comes to mind is Anthony Piper, that's doing his book, and he's almost done with his. He's just now finishing his own thing that he's been working on, and he recalled. I've been following him on Facebook too since we've had him on the show and beforehand, but like his struggle's been kind of played out over the last year and a half, 2 years or so, and he's coming out of that spot of that celebratory time because it's getting done. And he talks about how it was hard in terms of doing your own thing and making your own comic book and making your own book and writing it also and coloring it and going through those different like struggles as a professional artist, because you want it to be a certain standard. He starts to that's why I asked you the question about what have you learned about your style through this process, because he's learned a lot. He's had to adapt and stuff like that and change, and he's seen his writing skills and stuff like that, figuring out how to write, and not just for just the joke and the punchline, but having an arc of a whole a whole book and making sense, and all the characters having subplots and stuff like that, and all that good things. So it's really cool to see to hear another artist doing the same thing, and it kind of gives me a new respect for what it takes to make a comic book or make a graphic novel in general because of that part of it, especially if you do it all yourself, because both of you are doing everything yourself. So it's cool.
So to tie in kind of what you were talking about earlier, we were talking about how important feedback is and critiques, and and I know this is your project. Are you treating it purely as something that this is where you go to zone out, and at the end of it you're going to come out with a product, or do you, even though you're not working with a writer, do you have any sort of feedback? Do you have somebody that you bounce your ideas off of? Do you have is there that since it is, especially since there's some territory that you're not used to?
Sure.
Is that aspect alive?
It is, and there are very many opportunities for stuff like that where I have access to people to give me that kind of feedback. So definitely, for one, is actually a very close friend of mine. I don't know if you guys know him, but his name is Izzy Medrano, and we have a lot of history together. We grew up together since high school, and the guy was an amazing artist also. And right now he's pushing heavy on writing. So I actually lean on him a little bit, and I actually really want to work with him on this project too, because I know that he's way better writer than I am. But definitely, to your answer, it's for sure an opportunity that is there that I will take advantage of at some point, and I'm going to have to, because it's definitely one of those things where I can't necessarily make judgments on the things that I'm producing because I don't know. But at the same time, I think it kind of even goes back to very early on in the podcast where I was talking about instinct a little bit, based on the fact that, look, just seeing what I have right now, it seems to be easy to understand. I can respond to it really quickly, and by predicting how the audience might react to it. And I am sharing it on social media also. I think the big key difference is that sometimes many artists that start something, they hide it. They don't want to share it at the beginning because they're afraid of either people judging it, or they don't want people to steal it to a certain degree. But for me, it's like I put up every bit of the process. Like, here's some thumbnails that I'm doing. Here's some pages that I have.
Right, for sure.
But I want to hear what people are responding to. But not only that, I'm then using that opportunity to build awareness in a certain market that can expect that to come out at some point. So it's in 2 degrees. There's definitely friends, professionals I can go to, but also the general public that I would definitely turn to also, because they're the ones that I'm going to sell it to, and I want to make them happy for it. So for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah, is it interesting?
I want to go to.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Carlos.
I was just going to say I wanted to go to a question by Tekui. They're asking, so will you be teaching for years to come, or possibly giving short workshops around the world in the future?
For sure. To what degree of intensity that is, I'm unsure about, but I'm pretty sure that I will keep engaged with education with people for however long I need to go for. This whole side of like workshops and lectures, I've been doing a lot more intensely in the last year. So last year I traveled all over the world. I was going to places in Europe, places like in Australia, just doing constant lectures. So I was actually exposed to a lot of different education people that are going through the, I guess, similar, they're all in the same boat essentially. Here in the US, or whether in Europe, they're all kind of in the same boat as young kids. They all want to do what they want to do, and they're trying to figure it out, So this year I will still be doing a lot of lectures and workshops. I'll be in Poland in September. I'll be in Denmark in August.
Oh, crazy.
And I just go to these places and they invite me out there to come do lectures and talks. But will I keep teaching? I would hope so. I would definitely like to. And for me, it's like a lot of it is based on opportunity to come and play. If there's some sort of opportunity in the studio or a job that comes up, it's like, hey, would you want to take this? I would always be open to consideration, because for me, I don't want to stay too comfortable in a way, and I don't want to become, I guess, a repetitive motion machine where I kind of end up kind of staying stable and plateaued. Teaching is still helping me grow. I learn a lot from teaching also. That's the only reason why I've stayed this long up to this point. But I'm definitely going to continue moving in different directions as I go along. But I'm pretty sure I'll come back to it again too if I end up taking a hiatus. So, yeah.
And quite honestly, school has always been a really good place to see what so many people are so passionate about.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
There's so much creativity getting forced through these buildings that I mean, it's hard to go into, say, an art school, an animation school, illustration school, whatever, and not get inspired.
You feel it when you walk in. Yeah.
But I mean, I have another part to that too, which is when students ask me about teaching, they say, "Hey, are you going to be teaching for a while now? I want to take more of your classes." But anytime people are in my class in general, I also bring this up, which is, if you ever get an opportunity, I don't care what level of experience you're at, if you're in school, if you're an amateur or professional, if you ever have an opportunity to actually speak or have an educational moment to instruct someone, even if it's just one person or an entire group, you should do it.
Oh, yes.
What it does is it makes you realize the things that you're talking about and how you're also speaking. Because if you ask an artist, professional, it's like, tell me what your process is. A lot of them really don't know what to say. A lot of them don't even give you words that make sense as to what they're really thinking. Because they themselves have never really analyzed and thought about what are the verbal words that accumulate to what I'm thinking also. They know what they're doing, but sometimes they don't know exactly how to explain it.
Yeah.
But if you can train yourself to do that more, it makes you then realize what you are actually doing. Well, what am I going for, and how am I asking those certain questions? That then makes you that much more stronger within your own process, and then continues to help you look for additional things to progress you. So educationally, if you're a teacher, in a lot of ways, you'll grow just as much as a student will too. So that's why I tell them, the younger people, like, get that opportunity, talk about your work, tell them, explain them, what are you thinking? How do you do it? Even if it's a very minimal thing, and don't feel self-imposed judgment of like, well, it's been said before, or that person did it better. But again, you're putting that on yourself. Try it, just try it.
It's the best thing you can do.
Oh,
I think we talked on the show before when we had shows where we talked about our backgrounds and stuff like that. I think that was a turning point in terms, even in my career, in terms of the 5 or 6 years that I didn't even know while teaching that if it would help. And Carlos and Jack can attest to these things where you don't even know sometimes as you're teaching and stuff like that. And going back to the industry, the level of communication that I could do,
right,
was I felt like sometimes I still feel like I over explain things, whatever, because I want them to really get, or a project manager to really understand what it is happens in the process, so then they can speak confidently, and they love that, But teaching and getting someone to like understand, because a lot of artists do just go off of like, when it's like asking one of you guys, what do you do when you're coloring a page? Well, I do it. And like, I have artists now that don't know how to articulate that, and they're getting better at that. But from me having to like tell a freshman do it this way, they're like, don't really get it, Mr. Williams. I'm like, all right, cool, let's try this again. It totally helps. We used to push telling the students and guys that are on the chat and stuff and listening now, you can try this too. It's like one of the cool things you can do if you have a summer break and stuff like that, fortunate in your school and stuff like that, is to go and teach high school students or middle school students art, because there's a lot of art camps and stuff like that. They're looking for volunteers, especially for art students and stuff like that. And sometimes you can even get paid for these things as a student. And it's usually a 2 or 3 week camp, because somebody's mom read something in the newspaper that a local, Y is putting on like an animation class or something like that. And it's really, low level stuff, but you get to like teach somebody that really wants to learn something, middle schooler or whatever. It's a great way to spend your summer, especially if you're an art student or whatever. And if you get some, pay out of it, that's even better. And I think it's a little bit more rewarding than just working, at the pool or somewhere like that while you're home on break or whatever, because you'll find that you'll have to explain the simplest thing that you think in your head to a 6th grader that has no idea what you mean. But when they do get it, it's the best thing ever. It's the most rewarding thing ever when they get it and you see a progression. It's really, so that's another tip just that I think you guys can do, right? Even if you do it in your spare time as a professional. I still like to go to art centers. We have an art center out here called Mardwin. It teaches schools, buses them from south side of Chicago and stuff like that. And it's a really cool, self-funded, all by donations art center that like teaches everything from photography to sculpting to a little bit of digital art and stuff like that. And that's some of the best students I've ever taught. Is a high schooler that's never done it, and they teach them Blender in like 10 weeks or something like that, and they come out like looking better than my sophomore class. in college when I was teaching. I was like, it's because it's because they're like A, hungry, and two, like it's like learning how to communicate something so simple because you don't have a lot of time to like, you don't have a whole year. You only have 8 weeks or something like that. And it's cool. It's very rewarding. So try that out. I echo what Peter said. It's really good.
Yeah. I would recommend that too.
Cool. So let's go ahead and get into.
Oh, you got to give me more than that. We got 2 sections coming up.
Oh yeah, that's true. Let's do let's do the first one.
Here they come.
Okay.
Here they come.
Sometimes we don't do that one.
Peter Hahn style online. This or that, Marvel or DC?
Oh, how could you?
Marvel.
Good man.
How could you, good man?
I was just trying to be nice, but we all know the answer.
I respect them, and I do love them
for sure.
But as a kid, I mean, that was immersive. It was engrossing. It touched upon so many real stories, you know.
Yeah.
And DC was like, you know, there were characters that were godly, but you couldn't really connect to them in a way.
It breaks everything.
It does, yeah, exactly. But you read Marvel comics, and you have real people. You know, some of them, were special and mutants, and they're different. Some of them were just regular people, and they would have these tragedies or real life experiences that, you know, evokes them to do something.
Yeah,
so
people would die out of nowhere. You're like, wait a minute, what?
So Marvel.
Yeah.
Cool. Autodesk Sketchbook or Procreate?
Oh man.
Wow.
I mean, it's very easily said it's Procreate. Not because I know the people that run it, and not because,
I got a caveat,
but because it is a good app. It is a good program. I like using it. I've actually used it professionally too, honestly. But yeah, when I was in Poland last year, I was doing the lecture out there at an event called Promised Land, and doing my lecture. And there was a table set up, and there was a bunch of iPads, and I sat down playing with it. And I'm talking to this guy, and he's the guy who runs and owns the Procreate company. So we got talking. He's like, hey, we should work together, and I'll set you up with the iPad and Procreate, and we should do some things going forward, which I've been doing. So I did a whole impression video comparison of, you know, the iPad and Surface Pro. I use Sketchbook, the Autodesk, quite a bit, but I actually don't like subscription programs. I hate those kind of things.
You know, they're free now.
It's free now.
It's free now.
Totally free now. Yeah.
It's free. It's good. I actually just got a new piece of hardware for drawing on the phone, which was actually recommended to me from Landon. So I actually tried that out and actually like it a lot on Note 8.
Well, look at you, Landon. Look at you, Landon, with the shout out.
What was the piece of hardware?
Recommendation. I like it. It's great. But anyways, Procreate. Yeah.
What was the Charlie asked? What was the piece of hardware?
It was a stylus for the Android Samsung Note 8. And oh god, for some reason,
look at Landon molding the future of art.
Holding out, Landon.
Yeah, but it was essentially a stylus pen that's on. You can find on Amazon, but I'll find that later on.
Cool.
That's nice.
How about device or paper?
It's not one or the other. You start with one and then go to the other. So analog first and then digital for sure.
I like how you got you.
I'm gonna go ahead.
You're not gonna get me.
I'm gonna go ahead and straighten you out, youngster.
You know, you don't want to compartmentalize stuff. Everything is just a tool that you can use to express and tell stories.
Yeah.
Ours.
At the same time, I think analog approach is appropriate because, I mean, we can even take like painting, for example. You know, like digital painting is a huge thing. And like the early 2000s, the big trend was speed painting. Everybody did speed painting. And, you know, obviously when I was at Art Center, we start with analog. We start with gouache. We start with acrylics, oils, you know, all those things. And the one thing I found that is so important in the analog approach, even in painting, is that one, when it comes to value and color, you have to mix those values. You have to mix those colors. You become more aware of color theory in a way too. But in digital painting, you go straight to the swatch and you can just select the color you want. So I think it makes you more sensitive to certain things too. Even in drawing, you become more sensitive to tactile response, to line, to value. all those things. So yes, analog has that benefit of it, but again, digital also has a huge benefit because of time, because of editing, because of whatever sharing of content.
Information,
yeah.
That's why I was always partly back in the day, like always like rooting for Painter.
Yeah,
because I had so many of my
Painter was legit. It's
artists that I would look up to, like even the ones overseas and stuff like that would be busting out on Painter, be mixing and stuff, and I'd be like, ooh. Wow, really? That's how you got that color. And I'm like, yeah. I used to always be like, yo, just fix your interface a little bit. And let's keep that paint engine, because I still haven't seen anybody do their paint engine quite like they did when the artists was mixing colors.
Too. My computer couldn't keep up. It would
It was like I think everybody has that notion of like when they finally put paint on their computer and they're like, yo. What's going on?
I got a good crack of Painter, and then you realize that Painter's too big for your life.
Makes you exposes your computer woes and not enough RAM.
Being a punk computer.
But I always rooted for it though. I was like, come on, because I mean, Peter and I, you like some of the same artists. Like I've seen some amazing, like. Really rendered, like you can't even like tell anymore.
Katya Tirada used Painter a lot.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just like the skin tones and stuff like that were so soft and like. Okay, cool. Let's keep moving. Like me some Painter.
Wow.
It's still thing. Is it still a thing? I haven't even checked on it in a couple years.
Painter. I think it's still there, but I don't.
That'd be one of those ones.
I think only the people that work on it use it.
Yeah.
But Adobe was showcasing some stuff last year for some of their mobile apps where you're able to you take two colors and you mix them together.
Mm-hmm.
You can pick a third color, mix it together. Now, what's crazy is they said, okay, so now let's say you pick these three colors and you got all your mixes, right? And then you went and you used those colors on your drawing. But let's say you wanted to fix some of the drawing with a new third color. You change that third color and then it adjusts the entire thing. It was crazy.
I have to look into it. I haven't heard that at all.
Nah, I'll see if I can't find a video.
Be honest, the last couple months, I updated to CC. Up to this point, since the last 5-6 years, I was still on CS3.
Yeah.
Attaboy.
I think I was on 4. I've been on 4 a long time.
Yeah. And I only
just over here, both you two.
Licenses wouldn't approve on CS3, so I couldn't even open CS3 anymore. I gave up and I didn't.
That's that gentle push.
Yeah, gentle push when they lock the door on you and you're standing outside.
Thought we had a good thing.
Watercolor or ink?
Oh man. Well, watercolors obviously can be used for value and color, but ink is strictly. I mean, unless you're talking about colored ink too, are you? Or are you talking about black and white ink?
Wherever you want to take this.
We got you.
This is the Peter Power Hour.
Ink. I would say ink.
Ink.
Ink because that's my primary tool to draw and sketch with. Watercolor is there to accentuate the ink for me.
You see, I like that. He's like, first I need definition. Now that I have definition, I'm going to go deep. How about studio or classroom?
Man, I mean, for me, again, my brain thinks so deeply on certain things, but classroom. These are great.
All right, now this one, the guys are probably gonna. Oh, did I cut you off?
No. There's so many variables to that, but again, a classroom is great because you can inspire, and it's also a creative environment. And it's raw, but a studio could be that way also.
I was gonna say a really good studio can have a lot of classroom elements too.
Yeah, a very good studio could.
It's the people you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
All right, last one. This one's a little deep. Would you rather look through a window or bite into an apple?
Bite into an apple.
Attaboy. Attaboy. You see?
Okay.
Jack knew what it was before you even finished the statement. He's like, okay.
I'll think about that one. I'll let that one simmer.
Honestly, I wanted to answer that as quickly as I could because I knew someone was going to come up, so I wanted to answer as fast as possible.
Yeah. That's a subconscious one. You got to answer that quick.
Got to answer that. Again, that one doesn't even need explanation. That's
it just is. It happens.
Nice.
So thank you for putting up with this or that.
Yeah, of course.
All right, and with that, let's go ahead
and love this part.
Charlie lives for this. It's the only reason you stay on the show.
Yep.
I am hoping and praying that you pronounce this guy's name wow, because that's exactly what his art is. Wow.
That's like Portuguese, yeah?
Yeah. He's a Portuguese artist. And
ooh, fun.
Yeah, we're talking about inks, watercolors, all that good stuff. There you go. This dude, he gets his forms down.
Look at Carl
really
stepping it up.
Shadows, huh?
Look at you stepping it up this week.
Trying to.
I like
with a name like wow. You have to have some dope ass art. Look at this dude. This dude just finished wrecking everyone.
He's hungry now. Build a story off of it. Yep.
That's right. Okay. Yeah. He's on his way to Subway. Okay. He's like, how much for a $5 footlong? Why are $5 footlongs like $8?
Because you'll buy it.
But yeah, look at this. He's moving the camera around. This is something that I'm trying to keep in my brain when I'm doing these fun prompts, because that's a perfect situation for this, for trying out different things. Move the camera around. Like these guys there's a pile of Coke and some cash, and they're just sitting around probably drinking coffee, it looks
that's
like.
Sugar, Carlos.
Oh, yeah. It's flour. They're making sourdough bread.
In a bakery.
Things are blowing up. Like, I legit, like this... Go to JOAOSUST. We'll put the link in the.
I dropped it in the YouTube. I dropped it in the YouTube.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, sir. Yeah. And I just love how he's going from.
That's a little bit of Chuck Jones in there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this reminded me. This reminded me of one of the first things that I saw Peter ever draw was he's like, look, here's a horse. This is a box. This is a triangle, or this is a pyramid, or not a pyramid. What am I? A cone. This is a cone. Here's another. And I was like, if this dude does not, he was just throwing down shapes, and all of a sudden it was a horse. So yeah. I'm just going to flip through these. You guys tell me when to stop if you want me to.
Wow.
Wow.
Nice.
These are really good. This is really good. I like it.
Yeah, this is awesome. Look at he just goes in and puts it. There's a fan. That's
an interesting drawing, because this is a good example of intent. And I was talking about this on a previous show. Because this by itself is not a great execute. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's brilliant. But to get to my larger point, it's you don't know where to look. It's super confusing. It's like, what the hell am I looking at? But you know that his intent is he's going to lay down the color and the contrast and the lighting, and it's all just going to be like epic. So you know when you're doing these drawings, your intent is super important.
Sorry, I was.
That's okay. I was kind of hoping. Yeah, I was hoping there'd be a lit one, but it's not.
Yeah, I was hoping that the next one would be a colored one, because it would have looked like we had practiced it, but it wasn't.
Something else.
But yeah, take a look at his work.
Wow.
His work is wow.
Awesome. Hey, he works at Spa. Get out of here. No wonder we like you.
Yeah.
Right?
So cool.
Man, that studio is just finding all the good
They're
ones.
just killing it.
Very cool.
Yeah. So, Joao Sustelo is Joao. Boom. How about you, Charlie? Would you like to go?
Yeah, give me a second.
Every week.
Just a
When I go.
second.
You
No,
want to
what
go?
it is
Yeah,
since
I'm gonna go.
I
All right.
introduced you first, it ruined Charlie's timing.
All right.
I never knew.
So I had someone prepared, but now I got to change because I'm going to show you. Wow. So I was trying to Google the guy that you just put up, and this other guy came up, and damn, look at this guy. Wow. Wow, Ruaz.
Serious?
Man, I just like caught me off guard here.
That's definitely wow.
I wish there was some information about this. Oh, acrylic on wood. There we go.
On wood. See, yeah, I like that.
Super cool shapes and form. But I'll still show my other one because this one just caught me off guard.
Nice.
Another wow.
Very
I
nice.
could have saved it for next time, but it wouldn't have been as impactful. Okay, let me do my real one. Okay, Robbie Trevino. And I picked this because it kind of reminds me of Peter. It just was a little bit of a Peter influence, but he does these. I really like these character bits that he does.
Mm-hmm.
Really great line work, and he's always doing really interesting stuff with camera. He's like never flat on. It's never kind of this standard turntable pose. He's always doing really cool stuff. And then he gets into like this really abstract. There's like legs that have been like cut off at the top and like floating around. And he does color stuff gets really kind of nutty too. Like this really
kind of
cool.
you brought up that to the camera.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's actually what I'm teaching a class on right now at CDA, Concept Design Academy, because I feel the same way as you. Much of the artwork that I see from students these days of designs or characters or illustrations, the camera is just not dynamic at all.
Yeah.
On top of the posing too. So when I do see stuff like this, I mean, I'm reacting the same way you are. It's like, yeah, those are
Here he is with Jake.
poses. Yeah. Nice.
Hey-oh. Wow.
But I also just like his concept. His storytelling is really, really good. I mean, I don't know what the hell the story is, but it creates a story in my head, and it's the visuals. I mean, and he's just clearly a master of form. Like his shapes and structure and anatomy is just killer. So
Nice.
he's Robbie Trevino. Robbie with an I-E. We'll drop the link in the show notes. All right, Chuck.
Cool.
Nice.
All right, let me share my screen.
Good one, Joaquin.
That's a good
Wow.
one. I like that one.
Joaquin.
All right. So I have something a little bit different this week. Usually it's some 3D character artists or environment or something like that, but this time is different. So the other side of my I work at Next Now is like we do a lot of motion graphics and stuff like that. And this week I selected a motion graphics artist, or a duo, if you will, and they just did a new branding for Velcro, and I've been really inspired by different spots, because like being in on the other side of the agency type of world, it causes me to like have a new love for like different commercial spots and stuff like that. So I was really interested to hear about the Super Bowl spot that Peter worked on and stuff like that. But this spot here, these two artists, they're from another well-known studio, but then they went out on their own. And the two artists' names is Alexa and Lucas. and I won't butcher their last name. So Alexa Serbu and Lucas Vorju, I don't know, Bojir. And they did this spot for Velcro. Now, if you don't know the background of Velcro, like look up the background of like how Velcro got started, what the intent was in terms of designing how Velcro works, from what flower that the original creator of Velcro did. It's this whole real interesting thing. But there's a new spot that came out just a couple weeks ago. It's called Velcro Brand Hook and Loop, and they did a different process of how they did it, which was they use a program which I'm currently learning called Houdini, and it's very simulation based stuff, but it's a beautiful spot. So check the spot out. Lighting, color, the rendering of particle systems and stuff in a very artistic way. I love it. So check it out. So check that out. We'll have that in the show notes. I won't show all of it so that we leave that to you guys to go back and look. But here's their individual websites, and I'll just pick one of them because one of my dream spots is to work on like some kind of shoe stuff. I'm kind of a sneakerhead, so they've done some really cool stuff with Houdini and different brands and stuff like that, but very artistic. So you can see the style frames and the process, and the 3D renderings and stuff done all in an artistic way to portray whatever the brand's supposed to be. So this was done for a Nike spot and stuff like that, breaking down the shoe form and minimalistic shapes and stuff like that. Really cool simulation work and stuff through Houdini and stuff. This is the other side of like what interests me and what keeps me up at night in terms of like learning these other programs to do these simulations and stuff in an artistic manner. You know, you have different companies like Man versus Machine, which they used to work at, and Digital Lux, and all these other like really cool spots that like are doing these really cool development. And for you guys who like process, like their breakdowns of these things are always fun to watch, and they always have a breakdown. Like this Man versus Machine breakdown, when they work there, the use of like cloth and stuff like that in the simulation and stuff like that, it's just phenomenal, you know. So for 3D journalists like myself, it's 3D porn here. I love this, so it's cool. But their site itself is like also a testament. They also did a short film which you should look at called Flower, which is on Vimeo too. Look that up. The duo that I'm talking about, Alexa and Lucas, did that too, and that is really cool. And as I'm learning these things about like what goes into making a spot, what goes into style frames and stuff like that, where you can push pause, and each frame of a spot is a piece of artwork, you know, and you can just go frame by frame and have something beautiful about one section of these spots. It's like kind of cool when you get into this procedural simulation driven type of like style of animation and stuff like that. It's really, really cool. But also go to their site, because as an artist, a lot of times some of the top level motion designers and stuff like, they do a really good job, and senior artists in general do a really good job of showing the process, showing everything about the development, the research and development sections that goes into these things too, which is really nice. You're showing the grayscale versions of things and how they got to the point and what kind of flowers they research and stuff like that. It's very process driven on their website. Bold pictures and stuff to the point, you know, and how they take something as simple as headphones and break it down into the simplest form in terms of to tell some type of story or sometimes a type of abstract story. So check it out. I really like that section of motion graphics and simulation and cinematic type of stuff. Both of their names are Alexa Serbu and Lucas Verderoy or whatever. We'll have the links for you. It's really cool. Check it out. Get in your life.
Nice. Mm-hmm. Hey, Peter, is there anyone you want to share with us?
Actually, I do. Let me switch it over to the screen. I know a lot of the guys you guys are showing are more contemporary, young kids that are trying to make it right now. For me, though, I'm always about honoring the past, you know, and kind of honoring the people that kind of are still here right now. And a lot of them kind of get brushed away a little bit. One, they're not necessarily very popular or prevalent for young kids or well known because they're not really into social media. You know, this
Right.
guy, his name is Jean-Luc Begin, and you can see his Instagram right here. I met him for the first time this year at the air show here in Chino, California. And I've seen his work before in posters years before, and I had no idea who this guy was. Now, I'm working with a publisher in Switzerland, and they were coming to the air show to present because they have a comic artist doing a lot of plain comics. And they asked me if I would join them and be a part of the table. And they invited Jean-Luc, who was a good friend of the publisher, essentially. He was there hanging out, and he's an older gentleman. He must be in his 80s by now, maybe his late 80s.
Oh, wow.
He was like born in 1939. He actually went through World War II. He grew up in Berlin. And as a kid, he was surrounded by World War II tanks, airplanes, and he was highly influenced by stuff like this. And he immigrated over to the U.S. And he wanted to work for actually illustrating airplanes. This guy's stuff is absolutely stunning in terms of a drawing method. Most kids, I guarantee, will not know who this person is. I even have this topic that I brought up last time, this concept of what detail really is. And you have a lot of these artists out there who are absolutely amazing, amazing illustrators. Obviously, here's a young picture of him in 1940s, 45 on a tank. You know, he's in there somewhere.
Jesus.
And so someone asked me a question of like, what do you think of, Kim Jong-il and Katsuya Terada and all these guys? I love their work. Those guys are absolutely amazing. But here's the thing. Most general public people, when they look at artwork, their first instinct is to say, wow, there's so much detail there. I can't draw that. There's so much information. And if you really look at what real, if you look at sketches and drawings, then let's say like Katsuya Terada or Kim Jong-il. Those guys are masters of what they do. And I look up to a lot of their work. And if you look at their work in reality, I don't consider it detail, though. Because detail is all about actually communicating the very finite information that's there based on the object that you're trying to draw. So here, Jean-Luc was very much a technician. He was a technical artist, craftsman, and drew every single bit of detail. Guys like Kim Jong-il and Terada, to me, were masters of indication. They can indicate to you, suggest detail. Take a look at this object, a motorcycle or a car, and you can suggest the information to the viewer, then fills that information in. That convinces them that there's more detail than there really is. So when I look at Luke's stuff, it's like, man, it blew my mind because this guy literally is drawing by hand with pedographs and just on a technical level, completely out there. But again, like I said, nobody knows who this guy is in reality.
Patience, man.
When I met him the first time, the guy is extremely humble, probably one of the nicest people I've met, very open, and he's so skilled. But it's almost also one of those kind of guys where he's been around for so long, and he's had a career, but now he's not really out there in the limelight. So it's hard for him to continue to get this ball rolling. And, I've talked to his daughter, and I've had conversations with him. So it's kind of interesting to hear, from an older generation's perspective of what they go through, especially when you see this kind of skill. It's amazing that, they don't get that kind of recognition that they might even deserve. But even if they don't get it, as an independent artist, someone who's doing this for yourself, how do you then keep up that energy to keep going? And for him, for the first while, it was kind of hard for him to keep up this working method. So meeting him was a huge highlight of this year so far, because this guy, again, was hugely inspirational because I have seen his work before, but also just the person that I met was also inspirational for me too. I always like to, again, look for people that are currently around today that are actively working, but maybe not really well as known, but I think deserve that spotlight. Yeah.
It's phenomenal.
Very cool. Yeah, that type of stuff is always amazing.
I'm glad you said that because I have a book I have a few books from kind of the same story. This guy that I met at CTN that I'm going to use as my artist inspiration one of these weeks. And it's exactly that. Like you go to CTN, you go to Comic Cons and stuff like that. You see these guys that have fought the fight for a long time.
Yeah.
And mad props to those guys. I'm following Jean-Luc now.
Mm-hmm.
That stuff is good stuff.
Yeah, I think he lives in San Pedro. He's not too far from LA. So I'm always trying to get in touch with him, maybe kind of sit down and talk with him more and draw with the guy and get involved.
Yeah, for sure. He'd like that.
Think about that yourself. Like, what's going to happen when you guys are like 80 back in that? What do you think you'll be doing?
You think I'm cranky now? Do you ever this might not even be a good question for public. Do you ever go to a drink and draw and be like, oh boy, you got a lot of work to do? But
it's not even in a drink and draw. It can be in like an education.
Everywhere.
Really, I mean, it could be like a CTN. You know, somebody comes up to your table and it's like, "Hey, can you look at my work?" And of course, there are those moments where you're like, you know, it's just not working. You don't have it's not even the skill set. It's about you at the individual and the person who you are. You may not be built to do this kind of thing. You know, people use that word lightly also within talent. You know, you have so much talent and you're kind of maybe born to do that thing. I mean, I agree to a certain point. Talent is not the word I use. It's more about how you're wired. You know, I think your brain is wired to absorb information in a certain way. And in education, you can see kids that grow faster than others, but that doesn't mean that kid who can grow faster is not necessarily more talented. He's just wired to absorb that information quickly. And that other kid may be learning it a little bit slower, but that doesn't mean that he can't do just as good eventually in time. So but there are certain people that will come up and show you work, but it's like, okay, it doesn't matter how bad your work is. Do you show me that the potential of growth is there and how you're wired to absorb that information? And sometimes some kids are not. And it's like, you know what, this may not be your thing. So in that sense, it's like, you know, what do you do? I mean, of course, you don't just drop that bomb on them and be like, don't do this, do something else. Maybe really get a sense as to what's happening around you, you know, based on not level of experience, but, you know, like-minded people, the people that are in the same kind of boat, that are trying to get to the same area. You know, how hard are they pushing? What are they trying to go for? And what are they even producing? And if you compare it, are you able to match up to it? Because eventually this is it's a competition, it's a competitive field, and you're going to have to be able to compete. And if you can't, then that's, again, one of those things where you either stick with it and give more time, but also you have to come to self-realization that maybe this is not something you're supposed to be doing in the first place. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have the opportunity to try. Everyone should have the opportunity to explore. But like I said, force a square into a circle, and that's not going to always work, you know? So someone has to tell you that sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's okay for that to happen.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? If you like to draw, continue to draw. If you want to get better, you'll get better. And there's been people out there that have accomplished a lot with very limited drawing skills.
That even comes to another part of the question, which is self-education compared to like full, you know, system education, going to a college. I mean, I have friends who are self-educated, and I feel they are just as good, if not better, than people that are going to schools. And you can be just as good. But it comes back down into that individual. If you're driven and you're hungry for that stuff, you're curious, then you'll get it. You know, it's like I have a friend of mine who I worked with down in Sony in San Diego. I still feel, honestly, should be much bigger than he is. The guy is experienced. He's not young. You might know him. He does a lot of comic covers. His name is Dave Wilkins. Dave, you know, is an amazing guy. I mean, personally, as an individual, he's super cool. But his work, he was all self-educated. And I always felt like he kind of limits himself a bit too much by thinking that he's not as good as he might think he is. And I think he's awesome. You know, his work is definitely speaks for himself. But he's self-educated, and he has made it. He's able to get to a certain point he's gotten to. But again, he is very self-driven. He's very much hungry for the things he wants to go for. So I think that part of the question that people are very curious about, I think is a legitimate thing to ask as well too. So,
Yeah,
for sure.
And there's no better time in history than right now. You know, if you're a storyteller, if you're an animator, if you're an illustrator, if you just go and put your work out there, man.
Get it up there.
Or person. speaking of new ways of speaking, but there's no time better than now. And just everything on demand, and the YouTubes and the Twitches and all that stuff. get out there, consume, get better, and just go for it.
Yeah.
Let me present a question to you guys. What do you think is going to happen in the next 5 years? Do you think it's going to be in a positive upward trend, or do you think certain things are going to now start to go downward spiral? On every aspect, so like professionally, industry-wise, educationally, or even definitely social media.
I like Jack's answer to this question.
I'm sure you guys have talked about this.
Yeah, I like Jack's answer to this question.
Ooh, I want to hear you paraphrase it.
Yes. That's a long one.
No, I have my my opinion on it is and it shares a lot of common values with Jack's.
Yeah.
Basically, every time that there's a new way of doing something, everyone jumps on, and then the cream always rises to the top. Right. So with the ability to do this stuff, you're starting to see that the big networks don't have as strong a grip as they have had throughout history. And that's why we're starting to see why YouTube is popular, why even things like threadless is popular, because if you have any interest at all to be a designer, you can put a t-shirt in threadless. And if you sell 2-3 of them, that's 2-3 t-shirts that you've never sold before.
Yeah.
And you don't have to go to Target, or you don't have to go to whatever other store to go get some t-shirt that someone else made. Like I'm hell bent on like with everything that I'm a part of. I'm a part of this. I'm a part of Midway Documentary. I'm a part of my cartoon karaoke's. Everything that I have going on, I can take that and make a t-shirt, and I'm hell bent on having all of the t-shirts in my closet being something that I did or worked on. So when people say, hey, that's a cool t-shirt, I can either say, hey, yeah, I made it, or I was a part of the team that did that. And that is what technology is giving us.
Okay.
You might not be like, I'm comfortable knowing that I may not ever make it to Disney, but I have the ability to make all I've ever wanted to do in life was to draw and to make cartoons. And through my career of being a Flash developer and all that stuff, I thought that, oh, maybe I was supposed to be a Flash developer. But then that went away, and now I'm able to focus on all the stuff that I really wanted to do in the first place. And not working at Disney hasn't stopped me from making the cheesy cartoons that I've wanted to make since I was a kid.
Sure.
And everyone that I make, I get a little bit better. I get a little bit more efficient. And there's 2, 3, 4 people that'll be like, hey, that was actually pretty funny. So, yeah, it's just kind of like everything else. Know your strengths. I love art. I love being surrounded by artists, and I talk really good. So I'm using that. I'm using that to do this.
Yeah.
Whereas other folks, I've seen this on other podcasts and stuff, other folks that are artists first and are somewhat introverted, they're out there, they're making podcasts and stuff like that.
Right.
And it's a little hard to listen to sometimes, quite honestly. I'm not trying to bag on anyone, but sometimes it gets a little hard because they're not as talkative and they're not as outgoing or whatever. So it gets a little hard.
Okay.
But they're still doing it, and I'm still watching it because I love this community that we're a part of.
Yeah, I think with respect to how things are going in the next 5 years, I think what we see through platforms like YouTube and Twitch is the power, and with companies and big companies, they're seeing the power of creatives, right? Yeah. And they're seeing that, technology is really accessible to make it so that the art that you do create can drive and can influence a lot more than I think it could 5-10 years ago, early 2000s, right? And I think companies and businesses and the entertainment industry, be it animation or games or whatever, this resurgence of like Kickstarter and other things, of being able to put that power into creatives in the Midwest, creatives in the not so big of markets, and then make them have a platform that they didn't have before. So through the use of like, even where I work, through the use of VR, through the use of AR, through the use of the phones getting so good, you know, through the use of software like Procreate, you know, that wasn't a thing when all of us were in college. It gives power to be able to go out and create. And I think in 5 years it's going to be, I think there's some other peripherals that's going to come out. There's some other platforms that'll be out that, like, you know, I mean, I follow a lot of influencers and stuff like that, and I see stuff like, you have stuff like Patreon, you have stuff like, you have new things on the horizons, that, like, even that owner of Patreon talks about how there's new things coming where if you're creating art and you're creating something that's meaningful, it resonates with businesses, and it resonates with people who have money to give, you know, and even like it resonates in terms of like, even if you're not trying to make money, it resonates with just the everyday person to be able to inspire people more. I think there's a lot of opportunity through philanthropy and through like social influence and like to raise awareness and things. I'm steady surprised that I've seen a lot of creatives in the Chicagoland area be able to raise a lot of different money just through artwork, just through like showings and stuff, or slogans that make people think, and that gets a buzz on social media. The next thing you know, it gets a story on the evening news. It's not the normal story that you would see. Right. And I just think in 5 years it's going to be more and more of a common thing, you know, than we think, you know.
Yeah, I think, I mean, Carlos kind of summed up a lot of what I normally say about this. I think.
Told you.
But I tend to carry a mostly optimistic view. I mean, I think if history is any teacher, that generally, you know, things just get better and better and better for not just art, but, you know, humans in general. We tend to make things better for ourselves. And yeah, we go in swings and we have dips and reversals and all sorts of stuff. But in the, you know, the grand, so in the next 5 years, I think the biggest thing, and, you know, we touched on this a little bit at the beginning of the show. I think the biggest thing is oversaturation. I think we are really hitting a point where there's so much information, there's so much content to consume. And I mean, all the big companies and all the distributors and platforms are, you know, quote unquote content hungry. They can't get enough of it. But I think it's a weird paradox, because they keep saying that. They keep saying they want to produce more content, they want to release more shows, they want to make more comic books, they want to do whatever. And yet, I don't know about you guys, but everybody I've talked to, and myself included, I go on Netflix or Hulu or the bookstore, and I literally look at the same things that I always do. And I'm in a very, like, narrow field of content. Mm-hmm. And it's really hard to break out of that box and out of that wall. So I think people are naturally, we've had the internet, we've had social media, we've had all of that explode, and now you have access to any bit of information you've ever wanted. And it's the same thing that's leaking into politics. It's the same thing that's leaking up. There's so much information that you don't know how to distill it. So people are kind of recoiling and kind of going just back to their, you know, the things they like, the things they want. So I think we're going to see a little swing in that direction, that things will be more curated. We may look for voices and companies and artists in the community that we can look to sort of replace what used to be publishers. You know, I mean, there was a validity to publishers. They're not just the big mean company that takes all of the funds and screws over the artist. I mean, they have a curated eye, and there was labels and brands that you could trust for certain types of content.
I think trust is that key word. I
think that is going to reemerge in a different way, I think, than we were used to. But I also think that, like Charlie said, there's going to be new platforms that we can't even foresee now. I think even in the next 5 years, that short of time, that will, you know, game change, much in the same way that Netflix did, much in the same way that Kickstarter did. But I think especially now with VR and fully immersive worlds. I mean, people are going to want worlds to live in, to visit, to see. I mean, and that's crazy. If there's going to be all those types of new platforms.
And in and of that self, Jack, we used to think that was like a fairy tale notion of like saying that, yeah, people want to live somewhere else, and maybe that's only going to be able to happen in the movies that we see. But we've already seen remnants of that.
It's already here, just on a small scale.
Right.
Yeah.
It's already cool. You get that. The last year was VR for 2 years, and then next thing you know, technology shift, and now the big thing is AR, and VR is still there because it's just refining and becoming better, and headsets are becoming more and more wireless and stuff like that, and the quality in terms of the resolution and the way the processing work creates the image and makes it softer and easier to look at and all this other good stuff. But the notion you get when you have a truly cool AR experience of something happening on your tabletop right in front of you, and being able to walk around one-to-one and through things like SLAM technology that allows you to leave the room and come back, and that object is still in the place where you left it, and the phenomenon that we saw with Pokemon Go, which actually caused people to lose weight and be a little bit healthier, but at the same time had people almost put themselves in harm's way because they're staring at their phones while walking across the street, or mob actions happening in Central Park in New York City because someone saw a rare Vulpix or whatever Pokemon. Yeah, it's like it's here. And I tell people that's some of the best examples of like where we're going, even because people wrote off the phenomenon that was Pokemon Go, but that was one of the best AR things that you can think of in the last 10, 15 years that resonated with people, that caused people to like, go out and like
accidentally exercise.
Yo, seriously, like there was
a lot of people that were closing them rings on their watches.
Right. Yeah. Like, seriously, it was ridiculous.
That's true.
There was another game from the same company that was similar to what you would call an MMO, or massive multiplayer online game, that like gave people the same community that a Dungeons and Dragons would, or like a book club would do, and like it was multi-continent based, where there were. It was, and I don't know if you probably know about this too, Peter, but like there were like literally like people in Canada working with people they've never met in the upper part of our country, that was working with people over in Europe, that like at this point in time we're both going to do this thing in the game, so that it creates a virtual triangle that like now we've collected and we've done something that no one else has. A part of the world that you wouldn't normally be able to do in the game, because it was a quadrant-based game of like, I take this point, you take this point, you take this point. Now this whole section becomes red, and people are like, well, we can do this if I take this hike for an hour and a half and get to this one section of this state park, and you do the same thing wherever you are. When we connect together through wireless internet that's actually good enough to do this on your phone, because people are in parks and remote areas, and it was ridiculous. I got into that craze for a little bit too, and this is before AR was even to where it is now. Maybe back then it was a little bit more cheesy 2 years ago. So 5 years from now, it's gonna be great. Yeah, it's gonna be great.
Do you have an outlook on this, Peter?
For me, I mean, I look at it more from, I guess, an artist's perspective, being a freelancer, and how we're going to use that to reach out to people, and also the positive sides and the negative sides of it, and being a student going into it. And again, what Jack brought up, the idea of being overexposed to information, the oversaturation of content is going to be, I think, the downside to it. Everything always has an up and down wave,
Right.
Things are shooting up like crazy and changing. But I'm always curious about what that downward trend is going to be, and what parts are going to suffer the most. Like even right now in entertainment, like the big thing obviously is TV. TV is huge in the golden era, new TV content coming out constantly. And do I feel that might be the first thing to crash potentially because of overexposure of too much content? Yeah.
Sure.
Possibly. So, but in social media, it's definitely the side of like, generations change. And like even right now, Facebook-wise, kids are leaving because their parents are on it and everybody's on it and they don't want to use it. So where does that go from there? And then of course, how do you separate yourself as being an individual, where you're now being pulled together into the mass of content people?
Yeah.
And if you want to succeed, and if you want to then make a statement of some type, how are you able to do that? How do you stand out in this mass of information? And I find that almost like in 5 years, that's going to be even harder to do. And it just requires you to be on the cutting edge of everything all the time. That's a lot of burden, a lot of anxiety for students, because now they're expected to learn so much, even at that point right now. You gotta know 2D, you gotta know how to design everything, you gotta know all this stuff. And that's just being on a student level.
And then how do like you said, how do you stand out? Like, because we already see through, if we talk about freelancing and stuff like that, the dissemination of the studio environment, where like even with my artist inspiration tonight, that was 2 people that did that by themselves on their own, right? If students feel like they can go freelance or do stuff by themselves and not in the notion of being in the brick and mortar studio is less of a thing through technology and through, the connectivity of the internet, how does one stay afloat to be to front that cost of not even the physical cost of like money, but the cost of like keeping up on trends? Brick and mortar places have experience, they have connections and stuff like that. And while we are powerful creators, there's a level of experience and there's a level of like a system in place that was there through like the staples that we're now not having to use. So what does that mean when those staples are harder to achieve, or and it's on the one individual person? I think about that all the time as I see more and more of my buddies and stuff go freelance and do all these things. What does this mean? Do they become the stakeholders? Do the really famous artists that have done it by themselves now become the proverbial, superstar studios and stuff like that? And they, like, is that not a good dissemination of power? Like in terms of like how that is for other people who are trying to start out because they don't meet that same quality by themselves? I don't know. But, I think of those things too.
Cool. I guess lastly, do you guys have anything you want to ask me if we're going to close off soon? Is there anything like question-wise that's open for everyone? Like a chance right now. Anything you want to ask me? Like, what would you ask? I don't know how much more time we have, but
we can go as long as I was starting to wind down because earlier you said after this you're going to work on your book. So we'll go as long as you want to go.
That's totally up to you guys. But yeah, that's one thing I would present. Like if there's any in podcasts and interviews and stuff like this, it's obviously very systemized and you got to ask certain questions and things go naturally too. But if there's ever anything I want to present to some people, like what do you ever actually really want to ask me, even if it was like personal, very curious about that.
We got into it a little bit.
I've got one. Like if you were to define, okay, so I think you look back on most artists, particularly ones that have a volume large enough that you can sort of analyze, a common thread or a theme or there's something about their psyche in there. Is there something that you find permeate, and this may not even be something you're necessarily aware of and you'd have to analyze yourself, but is there something like a theme or a thought or a fear or a concern or something you think about a lot in life itself that seems to like permeate your work in any form or any?
I mean, I think so. At the end of the day, I'm still a person and a human, and I'm going to respond to things in an emotional response in a range of things. And you can be the most confident individual, but of course, there's always going to be certain hesitations and fears you're going to have.
Yeah.
For me personally, on that end, it's definitely about, as I continue along this path, will people want to maintain that interest in the things that I'm doing? And I can keep pushing and pushing and pushing and even going harder on certain things, but I can't necessarily control how people respond to the things I'm doing. And be as positive as I want to be. But again, the current thing I'm seeing right now is that the attention span is very short, and people get interest very quickly too. Does that mean if I lose the interest of the viewer, will that in turn, I guess, affect me and how I'm interested in things I'm doing currently too, right? Am I doing the things right now because of the response I get? Or is it really because I actually truly enjoy what I'm doing? And, I never want to put up this kind of front, as I said earlier, this mask by thinking that I'm fully confident, I'm fully secure of everything. But those kinds of thoughts of like, no matter what, even in social media, at the end of the day, I'm still going to appreciate and want the confirmation, the acknowledgement, the likes, and those kind of stuff. And we can always tell students, like, it's not about the likes, it's not about the comments, it's not about this. But still, when you have it,
Yeah.
it feels good. And I'm not going to deny that. I'm never going to deny it. So does that then want to continue to enable me to keep creating? Is that the reason then why I'm actually doing it? And I can easily say I'm not. I'm creating it because I want to create it, which I've stated. But at the same time, if I really go into it deeper, it's like, well, again, is it only, are there other aspects if you really look into it? Is it because of that social media aspect where you are now somewhat popular and people respond to it in a positive way? That is then somewhat of the fuel that it continues to drive that. And then there's that fear. It's like, what if that then disappears? What happens then? And then will you react in a negative way? Will you then kind of, obviously, like everyone else, freak out and wonder what you're going to do? Or do you continue moving on in that same level of confidence that they can move forward on? So I definitely wonder about that because as I know and how life is, nothing lasts forever and nothing stays the way it's going to be. And something always happens, whether it's a positive thing and a negative thing.
Yeah.
How you then react to that obviously tests who you are as an individual. So I'm waiting for that moment, honestly. I'm in that moment of like brace slightly, like something's got to happen at some point, And in my own life, things have happened, in fluctuation, from the loss of my mentor, from, the loss of my father. That's personal life, but also professionally too. I don't think I've yet hit that point of high peak. I still feel right now, currently, I'm moving upwards, but I also wonder, like, okay, there's got to be a downslope eventually too, where people look at my stuff and like, man, that's, that's what are you doing now, so those are definitely things on my mind for sure, I would say.
What's the biggest failure you've had?
There are actually professional failures, and I tell students this too, because I don't want to only just tell them the things I've done right or amazingly, but the things that I've actually completely failed on too. And it does happen on a professional level. I've gotten freelance gigs and I've taken them and I've bombed them, it's just like terrible jobs on them. I mean, as an example, one of them actually is with the publisher I'm working with right now. I met this guy, his name is Pierre, and he works for a company called Peke Publishing out in Switzerland. That's a lot of comics, huge publisher in France. And I met him at Comic-Con 2 years ago, and he liked my stuff. He's like, hey, we should work together. I'll give you a project. Let's do a comic. So he sent me that comic after Comic-Con, and he asked me for a test of pages, and I did them, bombed them. And it just didn't match what they were looking for. I was like, no, I don't think this is what we need. We need more of this, more of that. And it's like, I just couldn't do it. And I knew it just didn't fit well. And of course, the next year, I knew I was going to run into him again. So I was a little bit like, oh man, I wonder how he's going to react immediately over again. Last year, actually, he still was like, came up to me and said, I still really want to work with you, but I knew that project just wasn't for you. You got to work on something you want to work on. And that's how we got in the conversation of doing the blacksmith now. But I've had those moments in freelance gigs where it's just like I would take it. One that kind of hurt me was a personal friend of mine I graduated with at Art Center. It was about 3 or 4 years ago. He gave me a freelance gig to do sketches and drawings of designs for a theme park in China. And he said, just draw, sketch in the way you normally do. But the thing is, at that moment, and I'm not going to give any excuses, I just didn't do a very good job.
Right.
And I think I was overthinking it. And a lot of the sketches just turned out really stiff, and it doesn't really match up to any sort of energy or development. Even the content or the number of the quantity of the drawings, I was very minimal on. So, and it was like, yeah, this is not really working out. And it was like, he was a close friend of mine. And I felt so bad.
Oh, wow.
I really wanted to do a good job on it. And so, after a while, I was like, I didn't even know if I wanted to reach out to him and talk to him because, you feel embarrassed. You're like, oh, gee. And this is not like, when I was a student. This is like 4 or 5 years ago that happened. So, moments like these still happen right now today too. There's a potential chance I'll get a project that I'll still bomb on. And I think as younger people, when they look up to certain artists or they engage with certain professionals, the thing is, we're still having those kind of experiences and moments too of complete failure, bombing projects and jobs, and it happens for sure. So that's definitely one of them.
And how about personally? Like, how about?
Personally, I would say a lot of it was from family side of perspective. Growing up as a youth, my father passed away when I was 10 from a brain tumor, and for about the longest period of time, I never talked about it. We kept it very internal. The father and the dad I have now, who's technically is my uncle actually, but he raised me, and he brought his family, his two boys, who I just said were my brothers, and they're my family now. You know, that's what I consider them as. But I grew up in obviously in a family, in a life where I lost, a parent. So I had to go through that in some way, but I had no one really to turn to. So I didn't really have to talk to my mom or really talk to my father at that time or anybody else. So I was going through it myself, and I'm the oldest of four. So being the oldest, I had to kind of set that path for the younger people, and I have no one else to turn to really. So not having someone to turn to and going through this loss, created a lot of this sense of, anger and frustration and stress part of it too, which was the way I thought of what I did currently. I mean, I was very, again, internal, very introverted. I didn't share things. I hated crowds, but that was a big part of it. So growing older, as I went along, I started to realize, man, the one slight regret that I had, I wish I was that better older brother in a way, because I have a younger sister, I have two younger brothers, and they're all amazing people now. But when we were kids, we didn't really get along because we didn't have a lot of things in common. I was like that kind of black sheep. I just sat in the corner and drew. And
how much older are you from them?
Only 3 years. And so
okay.
I'm 2 years older than my sister, 3 years older than my brother. And they all kind of went through their normal high school phase. And, my two brothers are really into sports. They were physically active. And my sister was kind of finding her way. And for me, I was kind of like going that direction. But that was the thing. I didn't really connect, and I wasn't that example or that support that I felt like I needed to have, because my sister, who she and I were obviously together when my father passed away, I never even considered how she went through it, what she thought about what she
yeah.
At that age, it was all selfish. I was thinking of me. What am I going to do? How am I going to go through things? Of course, nowadays, I think about that constantly. And of course, now we're much closer. My entire family, I hang out with my siblings all the time. Back then, we barely had conversations, but now it's like I love being with them. But as you get older, you start to realize more about that kind of stuff in life, obviously.
Right.
And that's definitely one of the things in the personal sense of where I consider it to be somewhat of a failure, is about not being the better example and not being the better individual, being the brother. But at the same time, I don't necessarily think so negatively on it, because what it is currently today, it's very positive. And not having gone through it may not have been now.
Because you have to remember, you were 10.
Oh, yeah.
It's not like you lost your yo-yo. You lost your father.
Well, I mean, still at the same time, you go through high school, you become teenagers, you go through college, all that kind of stuff, you transition. And not to say that, it was primarily imposed on me to be that position, but still coming from an Asian family, you have those stigmas in place to a certain degree. Now, thankfully, my parents were not they were pretty strict, my father specifically. And he is, for me, I am who I am because of him also too. And even though my biological father passed away, my uncle took that mantle and became that figure. Nice. And without that, I would have been completely lost. He was very, very militaristic, very imposing. For us kids, when we were younger, very scared. Obviously, for us, our generation, we were scared of our dads and stuff like that. So, but when you get older, you appreciate it more. It's like that's the way it was supposed to be, And I think that's the way it is now. It's like that's the way it should have been, essentially, And because I'm extremely satisfied and happy and enjoy what I do on every aspect, from personal to professional, I never would want to go back and change anything of the way it was, And I can talk about myself in terms of how I feel or what I thought at that age, but this is what I want. There was nothing I need to change about it now. So, yeah, those are the personal thoughts, I guess. Cool. I think I'd like to share.
Yeah, I think we keep falling back to basically the community that we keep. And if you think about it, your parents are that community.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And it's always kind of fun to sit back and reflect and think, what if he wouldn't have gotten sick? What if we, like when I was a kid, we moved a lot.
Yeah.
What would have happened if we didn't move quite so much?
Exactly.
And what you and your siblings ended up with has a lot to say about you and your who you are and who they are.
Yeah.
Because something that drastic, there's a lot of people who they just lose grip.
Oh yeah.
And they go down this hole, and and if they're artists, you see it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because they're giving you a direct reflection of what's going on in their head, and that's when you start seeing it. Like who was it? Picasso,
right?
Was drawing super realistic, and then he went to Africa and did whatever the hell he did in Africa. He came back with Cubism and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I think it's again, it's the people who keep you together, because it'd be interesting. You're a very well put together young man. And I think that has a lot to do with how your uncle stepped in. Like, sure. Imagine, I don't know how it would have been if he wasn't there, or if he wasn't quite so militaristic. Right? Because take a look at Will Smith and his kids.
Right.
Like them kids are able to do whatever the hell they want. Dress up in white Batman suits and stuff. like, boy, I mean, put on a pair of pants. Anyway, I was hoping that you guys would have seen some of those videos, but Jaden Smith is on a completely different level.
He's a nut job now.
I'm not really following that.
Yeah.
I follow him on Instagram, and a video showed up, and I was like, oh, sweet Jesus.
Yeah, but it's yin and yang with him though, too, though. If you think about it, if you really do follow him, though, he has that, it's like the crazy free thought, but at the same time, the businesses and the companies, like that water company he has, and the same thing with his sister and stuff like that. You know, it's different, but I don't think everybody can do that though. Sure, everybody can't raise a kid that way. Yeah.
Hey, Peter, what's that one movie that scared the living daylights out of you that you to this day cannot watch?
They cannot watch? I mean, I can watch any movie to this day. I can tell you one moment of a movie that freaked me out as a kid to this day, and it still is an impression. And if you're an 80s kid, you would remember this, but it's that one little shot from Pee-wee.
Yes, I knew it. I knew it.
With the red scene starts to go red and stuff.
But that moment in the truck.
Large Marge.
Oh my God. I saw that as a kid the first time.
You know how many years you turn away from the camera in a split second?
That scared the crap out of me, that scene. I still kind of brace myself when that shot comes up, because in my mind it's much more. When you actually see it, it's like, oh, it's whatever. But in your mind, it's like, oh man, that was scary.
As a kid when it's coming too. That's part. Even if it's was playing on TV and you flip through the channels, you saw, you're like, oh, it's Pee-wee, I want to watch this, and you're like, oh yeah, but it's that one spot.
That's a crazy movie too, Pee-wee's Adventure.
Yeah.
That was Tim Burton, though, wasn't it?
No, I think it was Nexus, wasn't it?
Oh, was it? Oh man.
Maybe.
While we researched that,
and then there was.
If you weren't drawing, what would you be doing?
Oh, I can't even fathom what that would be, honestly. I tell my students, even if I wasn't professional.
It was Tim Burton.
It was Tim Burton.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, if I wasn't even working professionally, I would still honestly be drawing homeless on the street. I tell people all the time. I would be in the streets of Pasadena sketching, drawing. I literally cannot tell you, honestly, what I would be doing besides the art form and sketching. I mean, maybe I could. I like being physically active. I mean, I'm a small guy, but me and my family, especially on my dad's side, we're all very physically active. My brothers, they're really, really tall. So they were always active too. So we used to do a lot of martial arts and sports back in the day. So I actually do enjoy the physical activity of things. Yeah. My father always thought about having us maybe even pursuing that on a level professionally, whether it was some kind of sport. So even for me, one of my things that when I was younger, the whole physical side of it actually was military. I was really interested in the military side when I was in high school.
Wow.
Biological father, when he immigrated from Korea, joined the military, went to the U.S. Army. And And after that, he started working. He grew up in Ohio. But you know, that whole side of him being in the military, having a military family, my uncle and my father was in the military in Korea. So that was a huge impression that left on me as well too. So when I was in high school, I was like, military kind of sounds interesting. But eventually I was like, I kind of like drawing a bit better. So
yeah.
I might let that go.
That's a good move.
Yeah.
I did that whole military thing. It's overrated. Especially these days. These days there's just way too much happening. Good, bad, or indifferent, whatever your political views are, I don't even care. It's just what breaks my heart is the military is basically a vehicle for poor kids to get out of whatever situation they're in. Right? That's why I joined. I was tired of being poor. I had to get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
And now it's like everyone is picking fights with everyone else.
Yeah.
And it's the majority of the people that are getting sent to squelch this dispute is all these poor kids.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
But no, that's definitely how I think about it. And sketching, drawing, art is still something I don't think I could think of anything else I want to do, honestly.
Yeah. That means that you're on the right track, son.
Yeah.
It's a good thing that you're really good at it.
I have a question.
There are better people out there. You know? I like that fact. I want people to be better out there. So.
Yeah.
Man, and there are guys out there that are 100 times better than I am. So.
Cool. Do we have any more questions for Peter before we let him go?
Yeah, I got one more overarching thing. It's just more of another trend question.
Yeah.
Based on art and stuff like that, because you're illustrator and concept artist and stuff like that. And I've had this question. I've heard this question in a couple other places and stuff come up. And it's like, where do you see the industry going as in reference to concept art, you know, and then fluctuation of time versus when things are delivered, you know, and then the fusion of 3D into concept art, the notion that matte painting is not how matte painting is anymore, you know, the notion of like concept design for either film or video games or whatever introduces more and more 3D into it, even though it still looks more painted and stuff like that, but it's a tool to help get the thought on paper quicker. And you still have to have obviously a level of like, you still have to draw, you still have to be a great illustrator, but it's a mixture now. It's different, you know. What have you seen based on your teachings? What have you seen as trends and stuff like that in terms of from the college level and your personal feelings on it? Have you seen the difference in your freelance work in terms of what people are asking and stuff from the concept side of things? I just want to get your thoughts on that.
I mean, in terms of concept art on a high level, things are required at extreme high execution, you know, in terms of finish, in terms of the materials, or even the tools that you're using to essentially get a concept piece, which is essentially what you're doing is creating an asset almost, you know, for that actual product in a lot of ways. Concept artists these days, again, are required to do many different things. That job has become much more versatile in a way too, where you have to be able to not only problem solve using multiple tool sets, but also be able to problem solve multiple different things at times as well. On a student level though, right now, what the funny thing is that in the industry, it's very high level. And right now the trends are definitely going more to 3D. I'm sure it'll eventually go into VR at some point really soon as well too. The 3D aspect of it is very much still wrestled with on an educational level. Many students are still very fearful of 3D. I myself was also very fearful of 3D, mainly because the way I felt was I felt like the industry was trying to force me to become a 3D artist. That's what it is. Which is not the case. The idea is that you're using 3D as a tool to help you process information and problem solve in a better method. Now, of course, some of those assets potentially could be used to become actual things, but many students still today, you know, say things like, "I don't want to sculpt, I don't want to do 3D stuff because, you know, I want to draw and paint." So again, depending on the industry you're going for, of course, in video games and definitely films, it's definitely going in that route. So if you guys are going into direction, if you're a student, should you know 3D? Absolutely, to a minimal degree. Even the terminology and the basics of it, you should explore, even if it's just one program. And there are definitely trending programs that are out there, like Modo, or if it's going to be ZBrush, or even minimally Maya, if you want to know it. But still, I think as a 2D artist right now, the use of 3D is becoming much more normal and almost mandatory at this stage.
Yeah.
Am I myself also exploring the side of 3D? I want to, really want to. Definitely ZBrush. I really want to get into ZBrush more. Because for me, I find that to be the best program to help me formalize and visualize forms and shapes. And I can use those and help me draw things better too.
Yeah.
That's definitely the direction, but I feel educationally, they're not preparing them yet for that. It's not integrated well enough. Not. Even at the degree of like Art Center, most people there know 3D very minimally, and then on them to kind of learn it more deeply too. So it's not really fully enforced just yet. And of course, there are schools like Noman, which are more strictly in 3D, and art more strictly to design. But I think students eventually have to learn things faster to that side very soon. But I mean, that's what we talked about earlier, is the side that technology is changing so fast. They got to be on cutting edge sooner. But the problem right now is that the platforms, the schools can't keep up. They're not able to actually get the level of quality facilities and things that enable these students to explore that sometimes. So I think a lot of them are forced to learn on the job, essentially.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you that because I know you're a seasoned artist, but it's a hotbed topic.
Yeah.
One of my other little podcasts I listen to a lot. I mean, matte painting is one of the things I'm very, very much interested in terms of like, as an art form, and I like to listen and follow artists and stuff like that. But I've noticed that even from a production standpoint in film and stuff like that, it started being a thing a couple years ago, and now it's even more of a thing because it's just time based on deliverables. I see it in the agency world and stuff like that in terms of like, they want that illustrator, but they want more from that illustration. They want that proxy model at times, or they just the form reads a little bit better to whoever they're giving it off to, because it feels more of a finished state.
That's what it is, the finished state. The directors and stuff, that people that lead it, who are sometimes not artists, see those things as finished and finalized things, and they jump straight. I mean, what's interesting and weird right now in the world is that there's a huge extreme separation where you want designers and stuff that know all this technology, but also people that are very good at just like a specific style or a look also can do really, really well. So, guys like Kim Jung-gi, and he doesn't know any 3D. He doesn't really design. He just does his own thing, but people want his stuff for what he does. So it's interesting how people are either being known for that one particular thing, or you got to know everything.
Right.
So, it's kind of very extreme in this world right now.
Yeah, it is. Cool. Thanks. Yeah.
Cool. So, hey, Peter, we're going to go ahead and let you go.
Yeah, sure.
But if people want to find you online, where should they look?
Best way, obviously, is on Instagram, Peter Hong Style. That can lead to potentially Facebook. If people actually are trying to communicate with me, I think the best way always is to potentially go into things like events or shows, like conventions, Comic-Con, TPN. To meet me in person is the best way to actually get more information. Because people want to say, like, can I get your email or contact? But the thing is, I get a lot of emails, and they get in the spam or they get buried. So my response tends to be a little bit slow on that. But still, making comments, and I can also respond at certain times as well, too. But real quickly, Landon had a question about video games. I'm playing Wolfenstein 2 right now.
Nice.
Good catch. I was about to ask you that right now.
Reach out to me, though, right now. Instagram is the main thing for me. No other platform is really grabbing my attention. Even ArtStation right now, honestly, I'm not really active on it. I get bored by ArtStation, actually. Because same thing over again, and I see these trends and ripples. And it's not, honestly, unfortunately. As a student level, it's great, but for me, it's like, it's okay.
Yeah. You're not playing God of War right now?
I finished it.
Hashtag accomplished.
Cool.
God of War, great, sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I'm playing Wolfenstein 2. I'm still playing a little bit of the Dragon Ball Z Fighters, a little bit as well, too. I grew up on fighting games as well.
I knew you liked you for a reason.
I was a huge fighting game fan, for sure. Copied Capcom styles, Akimon, Fake, all those guys. So.
That Art of Capcom book was one of the hardest books I had to find back in the day in college days. It took me 2 years before I got my own copy of that book. It's the crown jewel.
So yeah, I still play video games. Maybe not as many hours as I used to, but I was a huge back in high school and arts one of the days. But I'm getting back into it now because I still want to keep in the trends of what's going on.
Right.
So that's why I also watch a lot of movies too. So,
You said fighting games. Are you a pad or stick player?
pad, unfortunately. And people go with stick, I know, but I was always comfortable with the pad because I felt I had less control with the stick, but I just don't have the experience on it. So.
Thanks.
Hey, Chuck,
Yes.
where can people find you online?
You can find me at my website, cargocollective.com/Charlie B. Williams. You can find me on Instagram, CharlieBW3. You can find me on Almighty Pinterest, CharlieBW3. Get it in your life. It's there for you.
And how about you, Jack?
You can find me, as always, at sketchbookjack.com. And Sketchbook Jack, pretty much or else. Same handle.
Excellent. Thank you all for being here. And a quick little thank you to Landon and Amber and Noel.
There's a lot.
And I think his name was Brandon. And who else was there? Oh,
B. Abram.
Josefina was there. Yeah, Brie Abram. I think that's who. I think his name is Brandon.
Tikaku.
Yeah. There's Chung Tek Wee.
Mm-hmm.
Who else was there?
Noel was there.
Oh, real quickly, are any of you guys going to Anime Expo, by the way?
Anime Expo. When is that?
Not this coming weekend, but the weekend after.
Ooh.
It's at the LA Convention Center.
I think Jack is going to be up here next weekend.
Yeah, we'll get
I
there.
might be walking around on Sunday. So.
Cool.
I'll probably be drinking wine and eating sourdough bread. There was one more. Takui. They were in there too.
You say Noel?
Tunes.
Don't forget about Noel.
Yeah, Noel, I have to, because otherwise she's going to come back and say things.
Animator and the first time one, Animator 2189 too.
Yep, we got them in there too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, thank you everyone. Oh, by the way, I'm Carlos. You can find me at carlosrgomez.com or coconutjustice.com. Coconut Justice everywhere else. This is Sketch Zone. Go to sketch.zone to catch up on all of the episodes. This is episode 148 with the great and incomparable and quite friendly Peter Hahn.
You guys.
What else? Yeah. If you go to sketch.zone, you'll see we have a store section.
Mm-hmm.
So go there. We have some t-shirts. We have some pins available. Jack has some stuff available up there, but anything, I'm not speaking for Jack, anything that has Sketch Zone on it directly helps the show. Because we're basically doing this for free. And I mean, that's a way to help out. Let's see what else. We're on Facebook. Just go to sketch.zone and we have links to everything there. We're on Instagram. And if you are doing the fun prompt, which is a hip fish in a ballroom, hip fish in a ballroom, make sure that you go through the process of tapping on the button that says tag someone and make sure you tag us, because otherwise it gets lost. There's a lot of traffic that happens there. But if you tag us, it's easy for us to see that. Mm-hmm. Hey, and if you're on YouTube, there's a subscribe button down there. Go ahead and click that. And Twitch, there's a button up there somewhere. Click on that. And if you want to come hang out with me, I've been trying to draw online a lot more often. So like the fun prompts, I'm going to be doing fun prompts live, and we can talk about stuff. And I try to give some insight as far as process and stuff, as much as I know we all will know. What else? If you are wanting to catch up to us and you're not here live and you're not able to, let's just say you want to listen to us in the car, you can find us on Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play Music, and of course, iTunes. I think that is it. Remember, we have hip fish in a ballroom, and next week we're taking off because in America it's the 4th of July, so happy birthday, America. So we're taking next week off, but we got a lot of really nice,
got some heat.
yeah, some really nice talent showing up. Anyway, that's it for my long-winded behind. Thank you guys again for being here. Thank you, chat room, for participating, and we'll see you guys in a couple weeks.
See you guys.
See you guys.
See you soon.